All right, welcome everyone. We are back for another Clan War Cup matchup between RTK and GGX today. So looking forward to the games. Everyone, now all of these games, unlike the last one, are going to be all live. So we have lobbies all set up, and we'll be getting right on into that. Both of our first set are ready to go. So we'll have A Move Hacker on the Lizardman versus Thankful on the Skaven. So then we have the rest of the lineup here on screen. So we'll have a mix of the 1v1s, 2v2s, and finally a 3v3 to finish things up. And that is going to be what we have to expect today. All the 1v1s going to be worth 1 point. 2v2s are going to be worth 2, and the 3v3 will be worth 3 points. So I'm going to let the first two know that they are good to go. And then we'll get right on into the first one. So we're going to have some fun matchups. So yeah, Lizardmen, Skaven for the first one. Then it's going to be Greenskins and the Dark Elves. And then we're going to be going into our first 2v2, which will be Empire Coast versus Counts and Tomb Kings. A pretty common matchup with the Counts and Tomb Kings there. Undead definitely benefit each other quite a bit. So we have loaded into the first one, so I'll switch the screen over, and then we can kind of finish going over all of the rest in between this first and second game. So I'll switch that scene. I know last time round we did have a bit of issues with some of the just connectivity. Hopefully things are going to be okay today. I did do a quick little check before things get going, and things looked all right. But let me know if you are seeing anything that any lags or anything, but we'll try and push through. Worst case scenario, the replay does seem to work just fine, so gotta clean things up. Both sides loaded on in. So for A Move's Lizardmen, going to be the first two. We do have a couple of Feral Bastiladons going to be charging forward. Some nice high armor, terror-causing monsters, and not too expensive either. So in case that the Skaven did bring some high weapons teams, it's not going to be the greatest loss in the world, but they will help kind of punch through that front line. We have some Red-Crested Skinks mixed in with some regular Skinks, so Skink cohort with Javelins, and then regular Skink cohort for some of that frontline infantry. So the Red-Crested Skinks are a war. These guys can be unbreakable. We also have the Umbral Tie the Salamander Hunting Pack. These guys do have stock, as well as they have a bonus versus large on their missile fire, so against like the Bell, Rat Ogres, any of the large regenerating monsters, especially with that fire damage as well, that we're going to be able to nuke them very, very quickly. In the sky, we have some Pterodon Riders, going to be riding some nice bit of harass. We have the Pahak Sentinels as well, mixed in with Tic-Tac-Toe as the Lord, going to be flying about. Does have Vanguard, so he'll be able to deploy with the rest of his flying goon squad. Otherwise, that looks to be pretty much it for the Lizardmen. As for the Skaven, going to be having that front line with the Skaven slaves, one of which going to be with some spears, and then it is going to be some storm vermin. So it's going to be some of the elite units for the Skaven. I mean, as elite as you're going to be getting. So this is the sword and shield variant. We do have the Council Guard. They do have that Guardian ability, and then both of the Poison Wind Globadiers going to be sitting inside this formation, rounded off with some more Clan Rats in the back. And then for some a little bit of range, none of the weapons teams, going to be only Skaven Slave Slingers, 3 units of those, and then some Rat Ogres who do quite well against any of the large dinos, though they did get a slight reduction to their armor piercing, though we'll see how that affects them, because generally they do quite well, like Croxigors and any of the Bastildons. They're able to more than carry their weight, or at least they have in the past. So that's going to be the armies. Let them know they are ready to start. It looks like they are getting underway anyways. I heard one tick off. So Skaven definitely going to be trying to just kind of hold back that line. They have a bit of a static formation, especially with those Storm Vermin. They are going to be able to trade. However, of course, we do have those Red Crested Skinks who have that armor piercing. So they will probably trade up into those Storm Vermin. That's going to be seeing how they're going to be able to handle the rest of things. Very mobile force, though, for the Lizardmen. They do have some of the Pack cohort as well, so Cold One Spear Riders, going to be helping with that mobility game, especially with these Chameleon Skinks, which did miss kind of on that initial deployment. But Skaven just going to be pushing up. Now, they don't have to worry about too much line of sight here, as they only have those Skaven Slave slingers for their range. They don't have to worry, especially, I mean, even the arcs of these Poisonwind Globadiers not going to be too big of an issue. We do get the Pterodon Riders getting caught by one of the Howling Warp Gale from the Greyseer of Ruin, who had to miss out on the spells there. It does have the Scorch and as well as the Dreaded 13th and that Howling Warp Gale, so it is able to pin at least one of the Pterodon Riders in place, though only having those Skaven Slave Slingers to really kind of follow up there. They are going to be able to tank that pretty well, as the Slingers just trying to keep them at bay. I don't know if they're going to have quite the firepower, though, to really deal with these all these Pahak Sentinels, Pterodon Riders. They're just able to trade way too well, keeping one of those Slingers off the board. These Poisonwind Globadiers definitely going to have a bit of work cut out for them as the Red Crestlings charge into that front line, right into those Storm Vermin, but they take a massive volley from those Poisonwind Globadiers, going to be taking them down to half health, but we do get a Feral Manticore summon from Skink Priest, going to be getting on top of them, shutting them down as these Strike-Crested Skinks, though, quickly get beaten down, especially with those Storm Vermin, and that the Pit Fighters there coming in support, and the Dreaded 13th drops right in the middle of the Skink Cohort, as well as the Skink Cohort Javelins, and things are not looking so great for the Lizardmen. However, we do have the Umbral Tide are getting some nice volleys into the center ranks of the Skaven here, as they get some nice shots into those Rat Ogres, but the other Rat Ogre is going to be getting on top of them here, and this is not going to be a unit that the Lizardmen are going to want taken out of the picture so early on. Those Rat Ogres doing a nice bit of damage on that initial volleys. They will try and pull out through the Chameleon Skinks, as we do have Tic-Tac-Toe flying overhead as well, just trying to get a little bit of support here, but some more bombs being dropped from the Pterodon Riders on top of these Poisonwind Globadiers, as well as some of the other Council Guards, so very nice value from that trade. Bounce power actually is going to be favoring the Lizardmen here. However, they are have quite a bit of units still left to deal with, as the Greyseer, though, is very much out of position, and these Umbral Tide are just going to love this target. Point blank range can be firing into that Greyseer, who is now going to be turning back, but does take one volley, able to kind of dodge some of it, as these Rat Ogres still kind of tied up these Chameleon Skinks and Tic-Tac-Toe here, doing a very nice job of kind of keeping these guys tied down and away from the high value target, which is the Umbral Tide here. And a nice charge from the Pahak cohort as well, right into the flanks of these Rat Ogres, and that'll be some nice support, hoping to break them, but we do have the Council Guard coming in to support, as well as the I guess the jar is a little open for the Skaven, and a lot of units kind of getting out of position, and that is with the mobility of the Lizardmen, they're going to be able to capitalize on that for sure. Some Skinks just kind of holding back. The Storm Vermin not really going to be able to do a whole lot of damage to that high armor, as the Chameleons just continue to try and pluck things down, as the Feral Bastiladon just kind of staying engaged with the infantry. Ammunition, though, on the Pterodons getting a little low, and with these Pahak cohort taking quite a bit of damage, the Skaven have taken the edge in that balance of power, as they are able to just kind of withstand the assault from the Lizardmen. All of those Storm Vermin are just going to be a rather difficult unit to take down. The Assassin is able to try and get on top of Tic-Tac-Toe, who has that Rival High Talisman popped, reducing that the attack by 40 there, but he is able to kind of pull out, though unfortunately the Pahak cohort has been taken out of the fight here, and this one's still getting very low in terms of HP, as the Skaven are able to kind of at least a little bit reform their ranks. Some of the stragglers have been kind of taken out, but those are just some clan rats. Most of the kind of the important units, these Storm Vermin here, these Poisonwind Globadiers, are going to be back online, and we still have two of these Skaven slaves able to start kind of putting some pressure back up into the sky. However, the Greyseer Ruin getting very, very low, and that is one unit that the Lizardmen really do want to take out right here and now if they are able to. Unfortunately, the ammunition on all of the Pterodon Riders is now gone, so they're not going to be able to just quickly take that thing down just from the sky, though diving down might not be the worst idea at this point. The Umbral Tide as well getting very low. They were able to use up quite a bit of their ammunition, but still having those guys around would have been very helpful. Just kind of making sure the last of the Rat Ogres would be dealt with, but the Rat Ogres themselves getting rather low. And at this point, it's pretty much does the Lizardmen have the armor-piercing capabilities to get rid of the Council Guard, because the Skaven have lost their Lord. However, they are still ahead in the balance power. We do hear that summon coming in, bringing that balance power right back to center, as the Feral Manticore does come onto the field, though most of the units in the immediate vicinity are all going to be routing. Both of these Rat Ogres going to be chased off by the Pterodon Riders and Tic-Tac-Toe himself, and this Feral Manticore at this point just kind of left a little bit up in the sky. Don't want to be wasting that summon, especially this late in the game. Needs to get at least some value diving down into any of these units. Now, would it be preferable to just kind of hanging out there while that summon does end up finally dissipating? The Assassin able to at least push off that Feral Stallion, still has a ton of HP, but if it is able to keep things on its tail, we'll be able to make sure that thing does route the Poison Globadiers out. So they're all of the ranged, I think, is pretty much now off the field for the Skaven. With the, I mean, the Poison Globadiers do kind of regain their leadership. The Feral Manticore does dive down onto the Assassin, but I think it's going to be wasting quite a bit of its summon already, just trying to give this Bastillon a little bit of extra space. And if it can dive down on top of the Assassin, that'll be very nice to get some of that HP gone. But there is that second one still around, be able to kind of deal with Tic-Tac-Toe, probably no problem at all. I'm really worried about what the Lizardmen have left. I just don't think that they're going to be able to take down all of the Storm Vermin that are left. Both of the heroes as well. Tic-Tac-Toe really doesn't want to be engaging with that Assassin. So I do believe that this is going to be pretty much it. Even though balance power is pretty even, I just don't see a very good way back for the Lizardmen. They really are probably going to have to kind of play on the leadership of the Skaven, but to do that, they're going to need that Feral Bastillon back. Getting that Fear and Terror is going to be critical if they are going to be able to somehow pull this one back. It looks like we do have a Rival Hide Talisman, I believe, is going to be getting dropped. The second one going down this time. This one, so Tic-Tac-Toe not really going to be able to do a whole lot of damage to that Assassin, but is able to get enough space for that Feral Bastillon. So I think that's going to be enough to get that thing back into the fight. But has taken quite a bit of time to be able to do that, and all of the support for the Lizardmen you kind of see is very far away. Even these two Slingers going to be returning to the field, and a few Pterodon Riders just kind of off onto the side fronts here, kind of just off from chasing their own units, but still this Feral Bastillon refuses to return to the fight, as Tic-Tac-Toe is just trying to give him as much space as possible, but by doing so is going to be taking a bit of damage in return. And now finally that Bastillon is back in the fight. It might breathe a little bit of life back into the Lizardmen. It is going to be charging forward. Should do okay against the Stormmen as long as Tic-Tac-Toe does stay relatively close. Should be able to keep that leadership up in the air here. But there's not a whole lot left for Lizardmen's ammunition, getting down to the very last shots from these Chameleon Skinks. The other one has used up all of its. And a little charge into the rear as those Chameleon Skinks charge into those Skaven slaves. Should be able to easily peel those guys off. And that Bastillon needs to target this Assassin, get rid of the leadership that is left. And it is able to terror route it. Now it just needs to make sure that it does break. And that might be enough, but there is still, I mean, Council Guard have 31 units left. They are pretty low in terms of HP. And balance power isn't quite gone yet. A few rock drops still left as they are able to get some shots in. Maybe not as good. They really could have been a nice shot right into this clumped up group of infantry on here. And the Feral Bastillon does end up rampaging in the middle of all of these units. And I just don't think that the Lizardmen have enough of that armor piercing. Like, engage in melee, all of these Pterodon Riders just aren't going to be able to really hold things back, and the only anchor is this Feral Bastillon, who is getting very low himself. I think it is only a matter of time before the Vermintide do kind of overwhelm the last units. But Tic-Tac-Toe might have a thing or two to say. I don't think he has any of his rock drops left. I think we've seen both of those go. And now the Feral Bastillon does end up routing. And with how low it is, just sitting on only 500 HP, taking a few hits from that Assassin as it does pull out. Now down to 273, and that is it. Is going to be shattering. And with that, the last of the Terror. And I just don't think that the Storm Vermin, I mean, these guys have 100 models left, sitting at 115 kills already. And yeah, there's 90 armor. Not a whole lot of armor piercing remaining. All of those red-crested skinks were gone from the fight a long time ago. But well-fought scrap indeed, as Haymu is going to be fighting it out to the very bitter end, trying to get every last dreg of kills. But I just, with both of the summons from the Skink Priest used, I just don't think, I mean, in terms of additional spells, there's some Flock of Dooms, might be able to get some nice additional damage. But 2 Storm Vermin, the Council Guard as well. Far too much armor, and it is only a matter of time. Chameleon Skinks, I think, have just a volley or two left. Take a quick look. 3 shots remaining as the Clan Rat Spears. Actually, at this point, though, the Skaven, they really needed to kind of stay together, as they are going to be kind of breaking apart to kind of chase things down, and the mobility of the Pterodons might be able to single out some of these Clan Rats here, as the Council Guard won't go down so easily, but the final engagement underway. Flock of Doom going to be hitting all of these units. Does miss this unit. They do kind of pull in, though, taking that additional damage. In the final fray, with especially the Council Guard out, though, Balance of Power. I mean, I've been thinking that the Skaven had pretty much had it in the bag at this point. By having those Council Guard out, the Stormvermin, the Sword and Shields actually end up breaking. The other unit getting a little low themselves, still have 102 bottles, getting pretty low in terms of HP. The Assassin still kicking, though. That's going to be a little bit of leadership support as they do kind of just continue to put a little bit of pressure. As the Skink Priest of Beast, the Pterodon Riders are all just kind of slowly getting broken apart one at a time. Pox Sentinels are tic-tac-toe. It does dive down, trying to get some hits onto the Assassin. Does miss its attack, able to land its second one, though, getting a little bit of extra damage there. But tic-tac-toe is losing his own support, as the Clan Rat Spears now kind of charge in, pinning tic-tac-toe in place in the late game. Now it's just going to be the Hero and Lord, and with that, they do end up routing. They'll put up a much better fight than I would have expected. I did not think that they would bring it this close here, but the Lizardmen are able to pull things back in the end. Those Stormvermin, just a little bit too much to burn through. So take a look at the AF battle report, and then we'll get into our next game after that. Tic-tac-toe only getting 357. I mean, he is a very cheap lord, though. Though I think getting a little bit extra damage would have been nice either way. Rest of the units, all the Skinks not doing a whole lot. Red Crested Skinks, unfortunate for them, taking some massive volleys and got beaten down very quickly. Even those cohort of Sotek, and really losing those two. I think just being maybe a little bit more cautious with them may have been able to get a few better charges in, but otherwise the Chameleon Skinks did all right. The Hopak got a nice charge in at one point, but then they just kind of got swarmed. All of the Pterodon Riders, though, really pulling their weight over the rest of the units, and even the Umbral Tide did all right, getting 1100, but still not quite enough. He was able to use all of his ammunition throughout all of his units pretty much, except for I think the Umbral Tide maybe were short a few volleys before they ended up getting pulled out of the fight. But even looking on the other side, nothing really stands out too much for the, well, I guess the Pit Fighters did very well, getting 1600. Otherwise, rest of the units, nothing to really write home about for the Skaven. That is game 1 in the books, as GGX takes that first one. So I'll update that score, as they are going to be first ones on the board at 1-0 after game 1. Switch back to the main screen. There we are. And we'll get into the next lobby, which will be, I believe it is Vicious Satsuma versus Ninja, who will be commanding the Dark Elves on GGX's side. So let's see if we can see that lobby. There we are. Oop. All right. In the next one, so it's kind of waiting on them to kind of populate their armies. Hopefully that shouldn't take too long. All right. Just kind of going through the matchups again. We kind of picked up after the Empire 2v2, so after them will be Norska, Coast, another Wood Elf mirror, just like we had in our last one versus Hello. On just luck of the draw, once more Wood Elves will be mirroring up once against one another, and then we'll have it the Dwarves High Elves against Greenskins Beastmen, Beastmen Chaos, Chaos versus Bretonnia, and then Bretonnia Dark Elves versus Norska High Elves, and the 3v3 it'll be Counts, Tomb Kings, and the Skaven versus Empire, Lizardmen, and Dwarves on GGX. We are loading on into our next matchup, so we'll switch on over to that in just a second as the armies load on in. This has been a matchup definitely favored for the Greenskins, especially with Vicious Satsuma on it. I definitely feeling pretty good leaning that way. But we'll see what the Dark Elves have to offer. They've been able to kind of punch a little better into this matchup than they have in the past, but it is still a rather difficult one. Some of the nerfs on the Greenskin side have been able to kind of balance it out just a bit. I mean, Butcherbird with the mirrors, it's just kind of luck of the draw. It's all blind picks, so both sides submit their rosters. And just, yeah, last 2 weeks have been Wood Elf Mirror for the matchups. Just kind of how it's going to be. Alright, so we are loaded on in. We'll go over Vicious Satsuma's Greenskins first. Looking pretty typical of what he normally going to be bringing. Lots of ranged units. So we do have all of the Skirmish Cav as he keeps bouncing them around. So 4 Goblin Spider Riders, Goblin Wolf Rider Archers, and some more 4 Goblin Spider Riders on that flank, and 3 more Skirmish Cav on the other far flank. Going to be seeing 4 of the Force Goblins and 2 Wolf Riders, so 6 total skirmish. We do have a Goblin Rock Clobber, going to be looking to try and pull that fight into the Greenskin side, as we have Wurzag going to be coming in for the Lord, as he does have Effigy of Dagit. We have Edbutt, Fist of Gork, Brain Bursta, as well as Gaze of Mork with his, of course, the Bonewood Staff and Squiggly Beast. So lots of items going to be kitted out for Wurzag, but can be all useful tools, as we have Orc Boys for that front line of infantry, and they will be backed up by some Orc Biggins, as they're going to be looking to really grind away with that infantry fight, and some Rusty Arrows with their armor sundering, kind of helping against some of the more armored units that the Dark Elves can be bringing. We have a Goblin Big Boss as well, going to be on his Wolf mount, going to be coming in with just They Need Stabbing. Going to be just helping to deal with some of the lords and heroes on the other side, with a Night Goblin Shaman as well, with Vindictive Glare, as well as, I believe that is the Wand of Jet, getting a little bit extra magic regen. As for the Dark Elf side, being led by Ninja, we have Bleak Swords and Black Art Corsairs in that initial front line. Going to be looking to really try and trade well into that infantry fight on top of it. Those Black Art Corsairs, really a glass cannon, but they will be able to kind of punch through, but they're going to have a long, drawn-out fight, and especially with all the skirmish that the Greenskins have, these guys are not going to be shielded. They do have 80 armor, but they'll still get kind of taken down a peg on the assault. We have some Dread Spears on the far flank against any mobility pressure, some Dark Shards in the center, and then we have some Cold One Knights for the more heavy hitters, so they will have the melee advantage in the mobility game, but they'll have to catch the Greenskins first for that to get underway, and some Harganeth Executioners, some heavy hitters looking to potential bring them against any of like some Stone Trolls, but there's not going to be any Trolls on Vicious Satsuma's side. And for the Lord and Heroes, we're actually going to be seeing Malice Darkblade coming on in on his Cold One mount, and he will be bringing a few of his own items. He has the Blood Price, we have a Daemon's Curse, as well as, of course, is the Zarkan. See if we'll be able to see that coming off, and then Warp Sword of Cain, giving it a little bit of extra regen, and then for the spellcasting is going to be a Sorceress of Fire with Fireball and Burning Head. So the Skirmish Phase is going to be getting underway for the Greenskins. With that Rock Cloud, we're going to be getting some nice long-range support. Going to be charging, and definitely once these Harganeth Executioners get into range, they are going to be a very nice target to kind of really break them down, because otherwise you don't really have that much armor piercing other than the Rusty Arrows. So you're going to want to take down those elite infantry, as Malice at this point going to be getting a little bit of pressure, just pushing back the Skirmish Cat, keeping them away from the Black Art Corsairs, as a Vindictive Glare does go down onto that Sorceress of Fire. Not taking too much damage from that, definitely benefiting from that nerf, but Vindictive Glare is going to be able to provide some nice little bit of poke pressure throughout. But on this flank, already I kind of missed these Dark Riders with Pierce Crossbows before, but they're actually able to take out 2 of the Skirmish Cav. They still have a decent amount of HP, so they will be back, these Force Goblin Spider Riders and the Goblin Wolf Rider Archers, but for the time being, that is a lot of pressure alleviated from this flank for the the Dark Elves, so they're going to be able to start putting some pressure in, especially with these Dark Riders and that Cold One Knights in support. So really going to be able to do pretty decent work. Now in that front line, we have Malice just charging on forward. They need stabbing is being popped on him, but Goblin Big Boss unable to really land any of his attacks throughout the course of that charge. And unfortunately, the Black Orc Corsairs are going to be wavering a bit, which will kind of make Malice kind of stand alone just a little bit, but it looks like these Orc boys aren't going to be holding up, as they are actually able to get routed off before they're able to put enough pressure on. Another Vindictive Glare going down, and we have a Burning Head, and we're going right through the Rusty Arrows. Satsuma is able to kind of get them moving, but they will take a bit of damage in the meantime. Definitely want to keep these guys nice and healthy, but the Dark Elves definitely coming out pretty strong here on the early offsets of this match. The mobility going very well for them, and they're able to get some nice picks off in the meantime. Rusty Arrows probably want to be pulling back just a little bit, get some of the Orc Big Guns kind of up in to support that front line. These Cold One Knights have taken a bit of damage, as we do have a little bit of damage coming off as Wurzag is going to be slinging some spells the Dark Elves' way. But the Hargoneth Executioners still sitting pretty in terms of HP. Not a whole lot that they have to completely worry about. In the meantime, you pretty much just have to try and not get completely surrounded. But we do have an effigy to get going down on the Cold One Knights, keeping them locked in place, as all of the skirmish, all of the range units going to be trying to get as much damage off as they can before they're able to charge through. And that is going to allow these Orc Big Guns as well to kind of move up and kind of provide a little bit of screening. But Malice kind of putting some pressure onto Wurzag, as the Goblin Big Boss just trying to dive in, but he takes a massive hit as Malice turns and faces him. Going to be getting him, as he does get routed right off the field. Malice power is still pretty even, but be putting my money so far on the Dark Elves. Have been playing rather well, so up till this point. Their mobility, another Burning Head going to be going right through these Orc boys as they try to pull out of it to try and dodge that shot, try and pulling these Dread Spears into it, but they will be taking quite a bit of damage, and I think they are going to be routing from that cast as well. So a lot of the infantry on the Greenskin sides is getting really beaten down. There's not a whole lot left that's really keeping things away from the range units. These Goblin Rock Lobbers trying to get some shots off as the Dark Elves continue to approach, but they've been doing rather, I guess they just haven't been able to really make a noticeable impact. Hargoneth Executioner still doing very strong, and I mean, Malice, he's been doing very, very well this game, surprisingly to see him, but he's been able to deal with that Goblin Big Boss very easily, trying to get onto that Night Goblin Shaman, but is able to pull back, and at the time being just kind of sitting there. And remember that Malice still has his transformation, which will slowly kill him, but if Malice ever gets into a kind of low health situation, popping that off is going to bring him nice and healthy, returning to that fight for a period of time. Another Vindictive Glare going down onto the Sorcerer's Fire. A few shots are going to be landing, but for the most part, that Sorcerer's Fire is still going to be surviving to fire off some more shots, fireballs, burning heads, which have been doing rather well at breaking through that front line. Infantry continuing just kind of, or the skirmish cav for the Greenskins just kind of slowly pulling away at another burning head right through these Orc Big Guns, doing a nice bit of damage. Black Orc Corsairs are going to be falling, but they are able to deal with more of that infantry, some of the more Orc Big Guns on the back front, but all of these Dark Shards there have no real pressure on them. So they're able to just kind of fire freely into these retreating Orc Big Guns, as these Skirmish Cav going to be collapsing on these Bleak Swords here. I'm sensing that time is going to be of the essence, going to be pushing them back. Should be able to get them routed before the rest of the infantry kind of comes into play. But these Hargoneth Executioners, we are going to be getting a little Brain Burst going off right into the middle, doing a nice bit of damage. But these guys do have a nice bit of armor, 100 armor, so it's not going to be doing as much damage. But definitely that Overcast, I believe, increases that armor piercing on that spell. Wurzag just going to be putting some pressure off onto the Dark Side, finally able to get on them with the Force Goblin Spider Riders, but they should be able to hold on, especially with the rest of the infantry so very close. But Malice Darkblade able to kind of deal enough damage to that Night Goblin Shaman, not taking a whole lot, but enough to get that thing routed. And with how close that Night Goblin Shaman is to that white line, I don't think we're going to be seeing that Shaman around for too much longer, taking a few more hits from Malice. But worry not, for Wurzag has plenty of spells to be slinging from his own arsenal. That is just going to be the Vindictive Glares gone for the Greenskins, and for the fire sorceress. I do not... She actually has ended up getting routed off, so she is making a break for the white line on the far reaches of the field, and things for the Dark Elves, they may be running out of steam here in that late game as the mobility for the Greenskins just continues to really stay consolidated, able to kind of start picking things off, and like all the infantry, the Dark Shards are all now shattered. The Black Ark Corsairs, even if they do end up coming back at this point, they are so very low, and even the Harkonneth Executioners, one of the bigger threats here, is getting very low in terms of HP themselves, so really Malice and then eventually Zarkan are going to be the biggest threats at this point, as long as the pressure is able to stay on top of these Dark Riders with the Skirmish Cav, they are going to be unable to return fire, as they only can fire in front of them, while the Forest Goblin Red Riders and Goblin Wolf Rider Archers do have that 360 fire. But it is still anyone's game at this point. Balance power is dead even, and Wurzag able to kind of pick apart the Dark Elves, who are just kind of really spread out, and that is definitely going to play into the advantage of the Greenskins. But a nice volley right into the face of these Forest Goblin Spider Riders from the Dark Riders with the Repeater Crossbows, but they are going to still be able to take that initial volley and charge right into the sides of these Dark Riders, as the rest of the units kind of picking off these Dread Spears. Orc begins holding everything back, as Wurzag going to be assisting his mobile forces, just trying to deal with the last mobility, because once these two forces are gone for the Dark Elves, they have nothing with that quick mobility left on the field, as we do a little swing out to kind of see what's still around. Things kind of getting pushed off on all sides of the field, as some more of the Skirmish Cav are going to be returning. Even the Rusty Air is still around in that late game, unable to fully get taken out by the Dark Elves, and Balance Power actually shifting a little bit into the Greenskins' favor, as Malice Darkblade has been taking some bit of damage. The Bleak Sword and the Cold One Knights are all getting very, very low, and I don't even know if the Harkonneth Executioners have ended up routing. The Goblin Wolf Rider Archer is going to make sure that they get escorted off, and things looking not so grim for the Greenskins here, but definitely going to be a lot closer than I think Satsuma would have wanted at this point, and it's just going to come down to how well is Zarkan going to perform, because once Zarkan gets popped, that balance power is probably going to be shifting right back to even, if not a little bit favored for the Dark Elves, but we don't want to be using that too early. There's nothing that really has that high damage output against Malice. I mean, Wurzag could maybe take him down if he gets lucky in like maybe probably about 4 or 5 shots, but would have to get really lucky on that, and should give Malice enough time to get that transformation underway. In which case, having used up all the ammunition for most of the Skirmish Cav is going to kind of force Satsuma to kind of throw bodies at Malice, because otherwise he could still have just kind of slowly kited away with the rest of his units, as really the Goblin Wolf Rider Archers are the only Skirmish Cav left that still has ammunition. The Dark Riders have used up pretty much all of theirs, and the Goblin Rocklobber, though, has gotten back. These Shattered Cold One Knights not going to be able to put enough pressure on him, but now where is the unit? There's an effigy, the Git goes down, but let's see if we can kind of just briefly see where the, I think these might be them over here, though it looks like they may... Trying to see where those are. Oh, there's the rock lobbers up on there. I see one still has its apparatus up in the sky, so it might be able to get on top of its unit and get some more shots off, but it's going to have to clean out the infantry from around that area to do so. And they are moving over in that direction. Only they have those Black Ark Corsairs, the only thing really close enough to stop them from firing, as the Dark Riders also could kind of try and get into that. Hank, you had to go and say it, but everything's been looking really good so far, so everything's running nice and smoothly as things have been in the past, so hopefully that's going to be able to continue. Last of the ammunition going to be fired off against the Dark Elves, and unfortunately I don't think these Goblin Rocklobber crews going to be making it back to their unit, as the Dark Riders with Repeater Crossbows are able to put enough pressure to get those Force Goblin Spider Riders engaged in melee, and are actually going to be bringing the Rocklobber crew into engage as well, just trying to get rid of that mobility. We do have the Demon's Curse reducing that leadership melee attack, and that is actually going to cause them to rout with that leadership bomb, definitely freeing up, and I think that is going to be a shatter too on the artillery crew. But things are still not quite done. The last volley from the Rusty Arrows, they might have They have a couple more left. I don't know if they're going to be able to get their another volley off as the Dark Riders do charge right on forward. They might just be enough, and they do rout just as they collide. But that is still going to cause the rusty arrows to shatter themselves, as the Goblin Wolf Rider archers are going to be using up the last of their ammunition. Only some Dread Spears, the Bleak Swords, and Wurzag against Malice Darkblade, and we still have not seen Zarkan yet, and it is only going to be a matter of time, but being very patient with that ability. You do not want to use it just for the sake of using it, because the Skirmish Cav, they still have their last ammunition, but then they are going to have to engage in melee, and it's going to be a final collapse on the remaining 2 Bleak Swords and Dread Spears, so they're just going to have to try and time that just right to get a sandwich in, and Wurzag does have a decent bit of charge himself, and I haven't seen any Winds of Magic being cast, so he's either going to be out of that Winds of Magic or just being very patient in using it as well, because it needs to time it just at the right time. Can't afford to be missing any amount of damage as the Goblin Wolf Rider archers get a little close. They have 1 volley left, and that probably isn't even going to be for all of their units, and there's the last bit of their ammunition. Most of that only picking off 1 of the Bleak Swords, but that is it for the ammunition. It is going to be Malice Darkblade against Wurzag, as these Goblin Wolf Archers getting in for that final assault, as everything kind of just getting the right timing. Here they go, final attack as the Forest Goblin Spider Riders charging in into the rear of the Bleak Swords as they turn their attention, just trying to get that timing just right. Wurzag charges in, gets everyone bunched up, and then in come the Bleak Swords. But here is Zarkan coming on out, full health, and just that balance of power shift the other way, as Zarkan, he does lose all of his own support, but at this point I don't think it's really going to matter, as now all of the Greenskins also lose theirs, and that means Wurzag has to face off against Malice Darkblade, and Malice is going to be coming in. Dealing with Wurzag shouldn't be a problem at this point for Malice. He is very much a melee combatant, and I don't think Wurzag is going to be able to bring things back, as he does take a massive hit, and that is going to be that. Malice, and then Zarkan finishing things up for GGX, taking game 2. Very well fought. Definitely Satsuma played very well, kind of pulling it all together. Unfortunately, just all the forces had Malice Darkblade only getting 1,400. It wasn't necessarily just a total stomp by Malice, but just having that summon in that back pocket, and you just see that shift to the balance of power. It was just a absolute just reversal, because at that point even the Greenskins had that balance, but with Malice giving in to that demon's pressure, it was all over for the Greenskins at that point. Just kind of take a look at the rest of the units. Infantry, one of the Black Ark Corsairs actually did very well, getting 1,000. Unfortunately, the Harketh Executioners, I don't know if this is necessarily the best, but I was definitely expecting Stone Trolls with them. But I think maybe it's just a good tool to have, but still not really doing all too great in this game. Both the Dark Shards did rather well. The Cold One Knights, and then we have the Dark Riders with the Repeater Crossbows, who were able to use up all of their ammunition, getting some very nice value. As for Vicious Satsuma's Greenskins, all of the Skirmish Cav able to use up their ammunition, getting some okay value. One of the Forest Goblin Spider Riders ended up getting beaten down pretty early on and was out of the picture. Rusty Arrows did all right, and then all of the Infantry, maybe not as well as Satsuma would have wanted, but in the end, it was not quite enough. Wurzag did all right, getting 2k in total value. Dark Elves, just a little too much to handle. We'll update the scorecard now, as GGX is going to be leading 2-0 as we get into the first of the 2v2s. So we'll find that lobby. All right. Let's see. This next one is going to be Killing Spalls and Houseplant on RTK versus Wenin and Verniker. I butchered that name for sure. Let's see if I can find that lobby. I believe this is it. No spectator slots. looks like I see 2 lobbies for, I think both sides are kind of, were in practicing, but one has a spectator while the other does not. Alright, so found the lobby, just waiting on GGX to hop on in as well. And then, yeah, this is going to be definitely a ranged strength for the Empire and the Vampire Coast. And then, but of course, the Undead pair. Well, they don't have them on their friends list, so we'll have to. I think they're going to have to do it since they're going to be the hosts. And I'll send a message over to GGX, going to be in this fight. Get them hopped on over. Oh, all right. I see them in, so we'll be able to get this 2v2 underway pretty quick. Yeah, so far we've had some very good fights, some very close scraps. I mean, both the first 2 went very nice, long, drawn-out fighting to the very bitter end, and they had that Greenskins versus Dark Elves. You couldn't really get that much closer if you tried, as both of the Lords having to face off in the last seconds of that matchup. Yeah, it's definitely going to be putting RTK a little bit on the back foot here, dropping the first 2 matchups. I mean, if you take a look at the matches, Lizardman versus Skaven is a Skaven favored matchup, and has been. Lizardman have gotten a few more, I guess, tools for that, especially with the last DLC. But not necessarily too surprised to see the Skaven able to kind of pull that one back. But they have Greenskins versus Dark Elves. That was definitely one, if you're looking at the lineup, wouldn't have bet, especially with Satsuma on it. But yeah, Ninja had a very nice build to kind of bringing that one in. And we should be getting... Okay, now we have our last contestant in. So everyone is ready. At least RTK's armies are built, so just waiting on GGX to get theirs finalized. I saw them in their own lobby, so it's just going to be either rebuilding their army or pulling up a saved one. So I shouldn't have to wait too long before we get into our 2v2. Then we have plenty of matches, though, to finish things off, as we have 4 more 1v1s, 2 more 2v2s after this one, and of course that 3v3 at the bottom there. Going to be waiting for that. Going to be seeing how everyone's computers holds up with all of the models, and hopefully it's maybe not quite as long and drawn out as we had for our last Clan War battle. I want to say that thing was over a half hour long, and that was with everything running at full speed. But luckily we don't have too many of the same types of factions there, so I think that one's going to be a little bit more straightforward. RTK is ready to go, just waiting on GGX's Undead, but lots of Undead in this first one. Going to be probably expecting to see Volkmar from Empire, probably the leading lord in pretty much every single matchup. So both sides ready to go, loading on in, so we'll switch that scene over as both armies load into Cliff of Beasts, a very wide open map, plenty of space for the ranged units of the Coast and Empire, but still is going to be at least relatively close. There's plenty of space on the outside. So get everyone loaded on in. Looks like actually, so we can see the Lord for the Tomb Kings. as Cetra, the Imperishable, is going to be on that side. So yeah, GGX is going to be the blue squad here. So we'll go over them first this time round. So for the Tomb Kings and the Vampire Counts, Tomb King's going to be having a bit of carrion up in the sky, 3 units of those. Cetra, the Imperishable, for their Lord, as we have Jazz Incantation of Cursed Blades, Incantation of Protection, and Wrath the Betrop. Pretty standard stuff on that. And we have Ushapti Great Bows, we have a couple of Skeleton Chariots, and then for the Tomb King's Infantry, it is going to be just Skeleton Spears, Skeleton Warriors, and the Kepra Guard. So we do have the Tomb Guard ROR. Gonna need to be rather careful with them. They are very susceptible to wind spells, to getting shot to pieces. If they are able to close that gap, they can do quite a bit of damage, being very anti-infantry based. As for the undead, for the Vampire Counts, we have a couple of Blood Knights in the back with the Dire Pact, who have bonus versus large, so nice quick mobility there, kind of help with the 2 Blood Knights. We have 2 White Kings. Now these guys are going to be only on foot here. They both do have Scab's Breath, however, being on foot is going to make them a lot more susceptible to any Volkmar shenanigans on the Empire side. Still not even sure if that's what they ended up bringing. We have Isabella Von Karstein, a very common appearance in these team battles, as going to be bringing that Blood Chalice of Bathory, giving 2,500 healing to any lord or hero. So that's herself. The White Kings, Cetra. All of those targets are going to be very nice uses of that. Invocation Heck, Raise Dead, and then we're going to have a bunch of zombies for that front line. We have some Crypt Ghouls on the far flank, and some Graveguard with great weapons in that secondary line for some of that armor piercing, but very wide on the infantry. Very, very wide there. Going to be looking to shut down those guns, which is what those carrions are going to be for. But for the Empire, we actually have Marcus Wolfhart, so no Volkmar here. Going to be just kind of plucking away at some shots now. I don't know if he's necessarily going to have the time to deal with it. He does have his Hunter's Snare, so he does have a little bit of a net. We have a Fire Wizard as well. Going to be bringing Burning Head and Fireball, especially against Tomb Kings and Undead. Very good choice there. So those Kepra Guard going to be a key target. We have a couple of Empire Knights. Now they are going to be very outclassed by the Blood Knights. We have a couple of Outriders though. And then some Carronades in the back who will do nicely against those Blood Knights. So a little support for their own mobility. We have at least, I think it's 3 total Carronades, very spread out here. So if they are able to get on one, all the others still going to be able to fire away. A couple of bombers in that front line with zombie pirate deckhand mobs. Going to be providing most of the chaff, as the Empire going to be electing to have just a few spearmen protecting the artillery pieces. Otherwise, they are going to have plenty of mobility themselves, as they have some more Outriders mixed in. So 4 total Outriders, plenty of Empire Knights going to be protecting that back line. I think 4 Empire Knights in total spread throughout. And then for the Vampire Coast, it is going to be Count Noctis on his Necrofex Colossus, going to be standing pretty close up front. It's going to be firing away. He has Captain's Wrath Moondial, Wraithstorm, Arcane Conduit, Raise Dead, and Invocation of Nehek. So able to get some nice spell casting off on there. Should be able to do rather well. Plenty of targets to be shooting at, but a lot of them fairly cheap. So we'll see how things go on both sides. So yeah, both sides ready to go as they are underway. So Marcus Wolfhart going to be pushing a little bit forward, as it's going to be looking to get some initial shots off. The Carronades, it looks like their initial volley went against the White King. Those shots probably going to want to be switching either towards Cetra or to these Blood Knights. Both those Blood Knights going to be major threats, as the Empire's mobility really can't contend against them. However, these Dire Pack are going to want to kind of keep clear from the Empire Knights. Now, if they had a little bit of support, they might be able to deal with them. And the Carrion might be able to provide enough of that, but already so you can see the Carronades just burning right through these lines of Blood Knights, dropping a bunch of models off these volleys, and that is going to be very good shots for those Carronades against these Blood Knights. They are, of course, that big threat to the mobility game. And they're just going to need to try and harass, try and get into all of these cracks, but there's just going to be so much fire going every which way. Carronades, these Outriders, all these bombers should actually do very well against all the infantry. So we'll see if the Tomb Kings and the Count's infantry is going to be able to close the distance quick enough, get into what needs to be taken out of the fight. and see how much damage they're going to be taking on that initial approach, as Noctis continues to fire away, doing very well against those Blood Knights. So him with those carronades just going to be tearing them a new one. The Necrofex just does so well against enemy cavalry, and you can just see those volleys, just many shots just going right through those lines, already racking up that value, and he is going to be pulling back just a little bit, giving a little bit distance. But man, those Ushabti Great Bows themselves have taken a bunch of damage before without even being able to dish out very much in return. Carronades doing very nice work against them. And they are going to be trying to kind of pull in. But now that the infantry is on the door, all of the carronades, the bombers, they're just not going to have quite as much time, especially with these carronades so far front. The volleys of bombers getting underway. The carronades going to be trying to shut down, but we have the roaming Empire Knights doing very well, very quick response at dealing with those carrying, getting them off. But this entire opening right here in the middle is going to allow like the Kepler Guard, we have the zombies, and we have the Blood Knights as well, looking actually some Black Knights mixed in with the Blood Knights, looking to just thread that needle and get into the carronades, just pressure out those Outriders, and really just kind of shut down all of that infantry. And it looks like we are going to be getting a Wraith Storm, I think, going down on to those Black Knights. Going to be peeling off a bit from them as more units just collide in towards that center. But of course the Empire Knights quick to respond to those Dire Pack. 2 units of those able to kind of shut them down, so they should be dealt with at this point, especially with Noctis kind of up in that area as well. Shouldn't be too much of a threat, and etc. has been able to avoid all of that incoming damage as a Burning Head roasts right on through the undead lines, just going through the zombies, going through these skeleton spearmen, and clipping these Graveguard as well. Blood Knights getting an invocation of heck on them, but they have taken a ton of damage up to this point, and more shots from Noctis just peeling off models left, right, and center. And now the Outriders all turning their attention to Isabella up in the sky. She needs to be a little careful, but she will be able to kind of tank at least a bit of that damage, and she does have some nice mobility up in the sky. As now Cetra charges forth, as Marcus Wolfhart definitely not wanting to be where he is. Doesn't even look like he's really used up any of his ammunition. May have been a little bit forgotten here by killing Smalls. Definitely doesn't want to be this close to Cetra the Imperishable. He's going to be taking a massive amount of damage once that big kitty decides to focus solely on him. Carrion kind of just keeping a little bit of pressure there as the White King with the zombies just putting a little bit of pressure, keeping things away from their targets like Isabella, from Cetra himself, as the all the carronades and stuff just are slowly getting pressured back bit by bit. Bright Wizard getting some more burning heads, but that one does look like it fell a little bit to the wayside, not really doing a whole lot of damage to the undead. And the Ushabti summon dropping down right in the middle, a little bit trying to catch out, I think, Noctis here. I think dropping it on top of this carronade may have been the better idea at that point, because getting those carronades out of the fight as they actually, going down right into these spearmen, taking a little less damage than I would have expected, but still a very nice Scabscrath going off from that one White King. Blood Knights continuing to just try and get heals. They're getting really close to their healing cap, but Noctis has just been very persistent at making sure all the shots are going their way. But that is really kind of the best, I guess, avenue for the Empire and the Vampire Coast is dealing with those Blood Knights. Again, another heal, but I think at this point that heal would have been better used elsewhere. Those Blood Knights are on death's door. They're not going to be able to really benefit too much from that healing, as Noctis once again be turning his attention. I think that shot did go right through those Blood Knights again, and they do hit their healing cap before that invocation did end up going through it entirely. Another Scabscrath going through the Spearmen, doing some nice bit of damage on there, but balance power is still slightly in RTK's favor here, as they have another Burning Head going to be going right on through, as it does kind of pick through some of the Spearmen or the Kepler Guard, but is going to continue its way right through the Empire Knights. So a little bit of friendly fire as it continues on its way. Luckily their armor is able to kind of keep them a little bit healthy, but it's going to just dissipate before it goes into some more of their friendly units, so the Burning Heads haven't been quite as on point. But taking a look at what is left, there's still plenty of infantry for the GGX forces. Marcus Wolfhart has been taken out of the fight, and then Cetra is very, very healthy, and that's going to be a very hard problem to deal with. Just taking a look at what is left for the RTK forces, I mean, dealing with Cetra and all of this infantry is going to be a bit of a pain. They have plenty of Outriders, and Outriders will do quite well against Cetra. And they're just continuing to kind of pluck away at Isabella, who has, I think, had to use at least one of her own chalices on herself to keep her nice and healthy. But the Outriders need to keep their space with it, and we have an overcasted fireball, which actually does end up missing Isabella and taking that overcasted damage himself. Unfortunately, does not end up paying for itself. Isabella able to kind of meander her way away as she ends up using an invocation on herself this time around, kind of keeping her alive, because as long as she's alive, she's able to use those blood chalices against, like, for Cetra, for all the White Kings. And just going to be a matter of time, but a nice volley there from all of these Outriders, and Isabella's getting rather low, and focusing her down actually isn't necessarily the worst idea, considering the support that she's able to give to Cetra, to the White King. So just kind of avoiding doing as much damage to Cetra at this point, and just trying to get rid of Isabella. Though every volley that is fired against her that ends up going a little to the wayside is going to be one less volley that's available to deal with Cetra. And Cetra now making a beeline for Count Noctilus, who has used up pretty much all of his ammunition, but he is not going to be wanting to tangle with that War Sphinx for any longer than he has to, even though the Cetra on his War Sphinx is more geared towards dealing with infantry. Noctilus definitely isn't geared towards dealing with anything of the sort, as another fireball this time arcing its way to Isabella. She might be able to dive up, but unfortunately she takes that shot right to the rear before she's able to take off, and down falls the healing for the Vampire Coast, or for the Vampire Counts and the Tomb Kings. And now all of the Outriders are going to be able to turn their attention to Cetra, take him down, because he does not have that healing support any longer. But balance power has shifted kind of right back towards center. And Cetra, yeah, of course, is going to be that biggest threat. Plenty of infantry. However, in terms of the infantry, kind of just looking at what the Empire has just kind of spread out. They have a few spearmen, some Empire Knights just really spread out. They do have Marcus Wolfheart is back around, so he might be able to get some shots off, but he is just on slivers of HP. 192, does not want to get anywhere too close, but he might be able to hold down Cetra, or just get a little bit of damage in. And Cetra has taken a bunch of volleys from these Outriders, as they are able to do very nice, but unfortunately the Bright Wizard getting taken out by that White King, going to be chased from here to the edge of the map. Might be able to kind of get a little bit of breathing room if, like, Count Noctilus or any of these cavalry is able to kind of peel off that White King. Was used up pretty much all of its winds of magic. I can't imagine there's a whole lot left at this point, using plenty of overcasted fireballs. There's been at least 3-4 burning heads, I think, at this point, so I don't think we're going to be seeing any more from that wizard. So not the worst thing in the world, but is able to return, so might be able to get a spell off before that White King gets close enough to cause it to rout one more time. Cetra just causing problems amongst the infantry of the Empires. They're just going to be charging forward one time after another, just cycling these guys down, terror routing all of the Empire troops remaining. But Pound's Power actually still says it's got a little bit favored for the Empire and the Vampire Coast, but I'm failing to really kind of see where that's going to be. We have both of these White Kings. I know that White Kings don't count too much for that balance of power. Probably not as much as they maybe should. And Cetra does take one last fireball here, but ends up going right between the legs as the fireball somehow misses Cetra at point-blank range. Didn't think that should be very possible here, but that is exactly what that fireball decided to do. White King going to be tying down Count Noctilus. And I don't think I've seen a whole lot in terms of spells from the Counts. We should be seeing a bit more summons left in that back pocket. Definitely going to be having some heals as well. But the Kepler Guard's still alive and well. Cetra just continues to take shots from these Outriders, and the Outriders definitely need to use all of their ammunition at dealing with Cetra. Bring him down, because once he's down, the balance power might be enough for Count Noctilus, as long as he stays alive, to really kind of pull that back more and more into their favor, and maybe try and deal with these White Kings more from just army losses in general than by trying to deal with them as a whole. And there is a little shot coming in from Marcus, seeing that from the grassy knoll, as Marcus is able to get some value in this fight, as he's able to kind of, well, a few shots missing though he is wavering himself, and etc. does get on there. He goes, ends up shattering after getting just one more shot, going to be landing amongst just the middle of the I guess this barren wasteland. Etc. taking more and more volleys from those Outriders, but these Outriders, I think, only got a few rounds of ammunition between the two of them. Another fireball, just plenty of Winds of Magic coming in from that Bright Wizard, as he does pop Nero's Incantation of Protection, though that's not going to be protecting him from that fireball, and he is a little caught up in his own Outriders, so the fireball is unable to release. He's just trying to weave and dodge, but all of these incoming shots, though these other two Outriders still have probably enough ammunition to really deal with him. The Empire Knights just trying to pin down Cetra, and now the shots can be coming in once more from the Outriders, and now the Incantation of Protection is going to be gone, and that is going to be it for Cetra. Going to be falling to the ground here, I think, after just one more volley. These Empire Knights might even be able to finish him off, and he is just, and down he goes. Finally dealing with that War Sphinx, and with that, balance power shifts pretty heavily actually into the RTK's favor. Still have that Bright Wizard around and was trying to cast a fireball, so he has at least some Winds of Magic left. And the infantry, somehow there's still some infantry left for the Empire. Graveguard with great weapons still sitting fairly decently, but both of these White Kings are just harassing Count Noctis as he just tries to kind of pull out, get away from these two, as the Kepler Guard, though, shouldn't be lasting too much longer themselves. All of these Outriders probably turning their attention, should bring down them pretty quickly. Just right now they're just getting some shots into the Graveguard, but not a whole lot left for the Undead. And I think RTK might be able to kind of even things out, as they're able to get both of these Undead. I believe they're not quite crumbling just yet, but they are at critical binding, so another volley might be able to push that over the limit. And once they do start crumbling, I don't think they're going to be lasting long enough with that sustained damage over the course. As the Outriders, let's see how much ammunition is left. Not a whole lot, but there's still enough infantry to kind of tie things up. Noctilus just continues to kind of kite away, getting a little bit of damage into the Graveguard as the paths do end up crossing, and a nice volley from the Outriders, point blank range, and now the Graveguard are going to start crumbling, and now they can probably turn their shots either towards the White Kings to the Kepler Guard. The Count Noctilus looking to be going straight through the Kepler Guard himself, still able to keep their binding from going into that crumbling, but it is still a rather close match. Both of the White Kings here could potentially pull things back, but with that zombie pirate summon coming from that Necrofex, at this point, the White Kings are probably just going to get dragged through the mud at this point. They have just the barest of supports with the Kepler Guard, but after that, it is going to be those two versus just the horde of Empire and Noctilus F, as he does kind of come on in using an Invocation and a Hex, so he still has plenty of Winds of Magic as well. So, I mean, right now, Hank, they're definitely attacking with, like, the summon here, which counts towards attacking. The Outriders still have some shots coming in as well. I'm not really sure how far behind you are there, but with the Outriders still having some of their shots as they're continuing to get some in, using up the last of their ammunition. But with that, now there is no ammunition left, so they do have to kind of stay engaged, but they have plenty of cavalry still left to get that charge in. And it's not necessarily using ammunition as fast as possible either. I mean, as long as you're kind of firing, reloading, firing, it's still everything just is fine as is. It's Noctilus versus both the White Kings, and the White Kings really have avoided a lot of the incoming damage, able to completely get rid of the zombie pirate summon here, which is just barely a few models left. They are able to kind of try and get their own charge in, just do as much damage, but all of these Outriders should be able to bring down the two White Kings, and even Noctilus himself, because obviously he has plenty of Winds of Magic still left, able to heal himself up. It's just a swarm. Now they finally did disintegrate, and RTK evens out the series Definitely wasn't looking necessarily too good for the two RTK forces. They were a little overwhelmed, I think, in that infantry, but they were just able to really pick apart all of these forces. I mean, the Cavalry Guard getting 352 kills, able to rack up only 1,200 in total damage, but 352 definitely dealt with a lot of the chaff for the undead. As for Cetra getting 2k in value, pretty much spent, he couldn't really dive in, really had to keep his distance with all of the carronades and the like. Otherwise, the rest of the units there, I know the Shopty Greatbow really didn't do all too well. Able to get 559, so not necessarily a total waste, but most of that damage was being dealt by Cetra and the Cavalry Guard there. Chariots, again, got kind of beaten down. As for the undead for the Vampire Counts, both of the White Kings doing very well, 1,000, 1,200, pretty much as expected. And they are really pretty much dirt cheap when it comes to putting them on foot. As for the rest of the forces, the Blood Knights only 83. Now, this is probably the biggest, I guess, waste on the undead is just the Blood Knights got, I mean, that's essentially zero value for a 1,700 costing unit. But they just got picked apart by Noctilus, who got 3,800 total damage. He just wrecked shop pretty much hard, carrying the day for RTK here. I'm going to take a look at the rest of the units. Bombers actually did some pretty good work, getting one of them getting over 800. Carronades, 4 units in total. I must have missed one at some point, but all of them doing very, very well. As for the Empire, Marcus, unfortunately, I think he must have been forgotten earlier because he got swamped by Cetra, barely used any of the ammunition. Bright Wizard was able to get plenty of Winds of Magic cast, so was able to do nicely on that front. And then the Outriders, I'm sure, are going to be doing very well. 2,100, 2,000 on that unit, 1,200 and 1,200 on the other one. So Outriders and Noctilus pretty much carrying the day. All of that range firepower, just way too much for GGX to bear. So we'll switch on over GG indeed. So let's find our next lobby, which is going to be Norska versus the Vampire Coast. Though I think Houseplant's going to be out of Norska, so I could have just stayed in that lobby there. But, oops. And then we'll update the scorecard as well. So now it's 2-2. So I realized I could have just stayed in Houseplant's lobby, considering he's on Norska for the next one. Oh, I know. You must have created a new lobby then for that, because that's Killing Smalls still sitting in that one. So let's see, where is our next... Yep, Ben the Barman, we got another Wood Elf mirror just like we had last week. So I don't see the next lobby. Got some messages coming up, so... Alright, let's see. Because it should be... Oh, there's the invite. Though, of course, I have to join as spectator. There we go. Houseplant versus Reaper. So yeah, Norska versus Vampire Coast. I would definitely give the edge to Vampire Coast here. I'm playing as Norska quite a bit. It's a relatively rough matchup on that end. But I was practicing a bit with Houseplant. Got a little bit of luck against me. Glad everyone is enjoying the clan war so far. Going rather well. Definitely plenty of good games. And I just remembered I haven't been updating my game here. So first game we had, Skaven win, followed by the Dark Elves, and then RTK won the second game, or the first 2v2. So now they got 2 points from that. Vamp Count's mirror is the best. Well, hopefully No one's going to be doing that. They're probably going to be avoiding any of the 1v1s as counts, but it wouldn't surprise me if you see a Counts Tomb Kings 2v2 mirror. Oh, looks like we had Ludwig kind of poke in, but we're looking for Reaper for our next contestant. There we are. We got Reaper in, so we should be getting underway pretty much. Next one is on Toothgrass Hill, so we got a nice hill right smack dab between the two deployment zones. It's going to be a little offset here, but should provide either side for an opportunity to either try and take the high ground, but I think Coast is going to be electing more to kind of sit back and make Norska come to them. Norska isn't going to have anything really outside the range of any of the skirmish cav to really kind of close that distance. So they are going to have to charge headlong into the fire of the Vampire Coast guns. We'll see just how things are going to be handling on that front. Letting both players know that they can load on in when they're ready. Now, Houseplant is ready to go. Just waiting on Reaper, and we'll get underway with our fourth game of the day. Should be another fun match. Yeah, so far, if you're just joining recently, you can look back at some of the earlier games, because each game so far has been a very, very close game. Both sides fighting to the very bitter end. Absolutely no side has had any distinct advantages up to this point, so looking forward to what the rest of the games are going to be bringing. I definitely think it's going to be some very fun matches throughout the course of the day. Yeah, hopefully everyone's enjoying everything up to this point. Yeah, good to be. I know content's been pretty few and far between lately, but things looking to be, at least looks to be some stabilization on the horizon. I can't guarantee anything in the next probably 2-3 weeks, but hopefully coming after that might be able to free up more and more of my time. Alright, so we're loaded on in. We'll switch the scene over. There we go. So we'll be starting off with the Norskans, being led by Houseplant, as we have Norskan Ice Wolves for some quick mobility. Otherwise, it's going to be very heavy on the ranged, as we have Marauder Hunters with Javelins. We have 5 units of those, and we also are going to be having some Marauder Hunters to boot, so 3 of those. A couple of Marauder Spearmen. A rather interesting unit to be seeing. You don't usually see Marauder Spearmen in like any matchup. They are really it just doesn't really fit too much into the Norskan style of play. And they do have, bringing them though, especially with this much ranged, is going to allow Houseplant to at least give a little bit of extra support kind of for all of his range units. Otherwise, he does have just a bunch of Marauders for that front line, none of the RORs. For the Lord, it is going to be Throgg, the Troll King. He's going to be waddling his way up that hill, trying to bear down on his opponent, as he's going to be bringing absolutely no items, so just his base kit, though he does have a Skinwolf Werekin to support, who is also just going to be bringing the base set for him, no additional items, but already that Skinwolf Werekin, I think it's like 1,200, 1,300, even without any units, or any items. And then the Fimir Balefina Fire going to be coming in with Burning Head, Fireball, and Arcane Conduit with Kindle Flame. And that is going to be the army, so looking to overwhelm with ranged. I mean, any of those, the Javs against any of like the deck droppers will do very well. the throwing axes will do well against any of the high armor. And for the Vampire Coast, we are going to be seeing, there's one unit kind of sitting off. We have a little bit of Sirens there. Definitely keeping them safe for the time being, because trying to bait out as much Winds of Magic as possible early on, because they are very susceptible to that magic damage, as we have Zombie Pride deckhands for that front line. And this is actually going to be the Gallows Giant firing away with Queen Bess. Like, this is a rather interesting army, as we have a fleet Admiral of Polearms of Deep. This is definitely not what Houseplant probably is going to be expecting in this fight, as we have Tidecall, we have Denizens of the Deep getting a summon of Rotting Prometheans, we have a Van Horseman Speculum, which produces that melee attack, melee defense in an AoE, and we have All Hands Ahoy as well. We have some Bombers, we have a Gunnery Wight giving some extra ammunition to the Gallows Giant, to the Queen Bess. We have some handgunners as well, so a very interesting army, as the Sirens actually, they may have just been kind of forgotten on that initial deployment, are going to be kind of pushing over on that one flank, but already Queen Bess doing some massive amount of damage. These javelins taking already 50% of the health, another shot landing kind of just in front of those Marauders. We have a Fireball now arcing its way out, as Queen Bess going to be the target, trying to get rid of that as quickly as possible. The crew does drop, but you really have to drop that crew before that even goes off. Now, if GGX knows the Queen Bess, you can actually heal up the artillery piece with a Nahek, if you are able to want to be using that. But unfortunately, as I'm going over that army, they do not have any of those. There's no healing, there is no summons for the Vampire Coast here, but this is a very interesting build for the Vampire Coast. Definitely a very fun build as well, having some nice units. You don't usually see the Gallows Giant or Queen Bess all too often. And those fireballs probably cannot come soon enough for that Fimir Balefiend. Wants as many of those cast as quickly as possible, get rid of the Queen Bess, as this one is going to be going right on in, landing. That's 2 hits against the Queen Bess, but it's going to take more than that to deal with it, as those shots just continue to just wreak havoc among those Marauders or our Hunters. But the Marauder Hunter Javelins now getting a nice volley into these handgunners, able to take off a nice bit of HP with all of their low armor. These guys are pretty much archers, just kind of short range with that bonus versus large. Now, definitely that Necrofex Colossus needs to stay away from them. Does not want to be getting anywhere close to that all of those anti-large missile fire, and burning, or the Fireball once again going to be trying to deal with this Queen Bess as it kind of arcs its way in, and down goes the Queen Bess, and getting 104 kills. We'll kind of quickly swing over it, try and take a look at what we got for total value. So only 1,000, not quite able to pay for itself, but just that pressure and just dealing with all of these javelins, because these javelins can just absolutely mess up. But a Burning Head was trying to go through into the back line, as Throgg and the Skinwolf Hurricane does drop down on top of the Vampire Fleet Admiral, who actually ends up canceling that spell, as you're trying to get that Denizens of the Deep off, just trying to stagger it, and this time the spell is able to go off. And that actually, that Gallows Giant point blank range against Throgg and that Werekin might be a very good idea to just kind of wade into melee here, because they can do just so much damage, just kicking that Vampire Fleet Captain around with that Werekin and Throgg. Throgg definitely going to want to getting a little bit of distance here, as he is wavering against undead. Maybe that Wintertooth Crown may not have been such a bad idea, as the front line for the Vampire Coast is slowly getting kind of picked apart bit by bit, as some openings are starting to open up, but there's still plenty of ammunition left on all these Hunters. The Javelins still have plenty of damage to be dishing out. That Werekin a little caught up in these Rotting Prometheans, whose summon is about to wear off, but luckily for that Skinwolf Werekin, able to kind of withstand or kind of avoid any of that incoming fire, as we get a shot coming off from that Gunnery Wight, as it does kind of fire off that explosive round into the middle of those Hunters. But those Hunters do have a rather spread out formation, so able to avoid most of that damage, as the Burning Head arcs its way through some of the frontline troops, but for the most part they are able to kind of avoid most of that damage. But all of the infantry now for the Vampire Coast is getting very low, not a whole lot left. The carronades are still firing away, and the Vampire Fleet Captain is able to kind of start returning to this fight, but that Gallows Giant now getting pretty far forward, as another one of those Rotting Promethean summons going to be going down. And Going to be just kind of mucking things up for that Skin Wolf Werekin, as that Gallows Giant with that fire damage able to do a nice bit of damage as it tries to roast that Skin Wolf Werekin on the ground. But all of these hunters and the throwing axes are now going to be in range of that Gallows Giant. I just don't see that Gallows Giant lasting too much longer, because he needs to try and get out of range of these guys, because even a volley is going to be enough to finish it off. And I think down away is going to be that Gallows Giant. We do get that Tide Call as another Burning Head arcs its way through the Zombie Pride Deckhand mobs on that front, as the Gallows Giant does fall, able to do quite a bit of damage to that Skin Wolf Werekin in the meantime, as it's going to be running for the hills. Throgg can be kind of just dishing things out on the far flank, but it is getting rather low himself. He will be regenning, as is that Werekin, so it's going to keep those guys in reserve at this point. But balance power is still pretty even losing Queen Bess and losing the Gallows Giant. The Balefiend is getting rather low as the Vampire Fleet Captain kind of comes in, but with that summon about to dissipate, balance power should shift a little bit more into Norska's favor. Still plenty of units left with plenty of ammunition. The Carronade now would be a good time for those Norska Knights to actually kind of go in and around, try and get into that Carronade, shut that one down. But it is going to be kind of electing instead to kind of engage in that front line, trying to pull on through as these handguns continue to just kind of pluck some more shots. Werekin diving on top of that pole arms in the middle there. And there is that balance power shift a little into Norskin's favor, as those Brooding Prometheans do finally kind of dissipate. Another Tide Call going right through those Brood Hunters, doing a nice bit of damage there. But that Vampire Fleet Captain is really standing alone, and the infantry has been finally able to get onto the Carronades, who, looking at their ammunition, I mean, they've been getting some ammunition from that Gunnery Wight, so, I mean, seeing that at full isn't quite the same as against some factions, because once that Necrofex did finally fall, there wasn't really anything for that Gunnery Wight to really give that ammunition to other than those artillery pieces. And I think this is going to be Norska's game at this point. There's just way too many units left. The Sirens are still at full health. I'm not really sure where they've been running off to in this fight, but they will be able to kind of maintain by getting a little summon. But with that Burning Head, they're not going to be able to last too much longer there, as you just see that health just absolutely plummet there, causing the Carronades to disintegrate. Sirens are now disintegrating as well, and that is going to be your game, as Norska is able to pull through against the Vampire Coast, as they will take the lead now 3-2, as that is 3 unanswered points on the board for RTK. So we'll update that scorecard as we take a look at the after battle report here in just a second. So this was pretty much the build that Houseplant was using against me, with a few changes, adding in these Marauder Spearmen, switching out Throgg. But Throgg, unfortunately, not able to get a whole lot of value in, getting only 586. However, that Vimir Balefiend, 1,500 on him, 1,500 on the Werekin, so doing very well with those units. Rest of the infantry, not really going to be expecting all too much. Same with the Spearmen. This one, the Spearmen did get 700, so it was able to do rather well in that. But all of the Marauder Hunters getting some okay value. Some of the Javelins, expecting to see, there we go. So there's one that gets 957, the other gets 624, so nothing too ridiculous. There's definitely been some games you see those things just rack up thousands of value between multiple units. As for the Vampire Coast, none of the infantry can be doing all too much. Sirens got really roasted there at the end. Otherwise, I think they were kind of maybe a little bit forgotten, because I didn't see them in that fight, and then they come in back with full health. Gallows Giant getting about 1,000. Carronades did rather well, and then unfortunately Queen Bess only getting 1,100 for a 1,600 costing unit. Vampire Fleet Captain Admirals actually did some fairly decent work, but definitely a rather interesting build for the Vampire Coast. But nonetheless, RTK is going to come out on top for that one, and we'll update the board as Coast falls to Norska. GG indeed to both. And now the Wood Elf mirror that everyone's been waiting for, as we will have Zarix against Mr. Duddles. On the Wood Elves, it's going to be Prague for the map. Now it's got to find where they are. Let's see. I do not see their lobby, so we'll have to kind of get one of them added to the friends list, I think. I feel like I've played through with at least Zarix, but all right. Alright, sent my friend code over to Zarix to get, so I can see the lobby, because I don't really see it right now. And then we should be getting underway for our next one, unless I just missed it. Yeah, I don't see it. And yeah, just I guess a note, even though the beta is out, we have not, this is on the live version, so we're not having those additional cav changes just yet. We're kind of waiting for the consensus on that one. I think there's some tournaments that are running that. So let's see. All right, should be able to see the lobby now. There we are. Oops. And now we play the guessing game of what did they make their password. Of course, yeah, okay, so it's a password that nobody uses. No wonder I couldn't guess what it was. Alright, so joining on in. Both sides should be pretty much ready to go. And then we'll be getting right on in, so. Ready when you are. I was supposed to give the password in chat. I'm guessing, I don't know, Nicholas I think it might be Zarix or Mr. Diddles. But we are in, we are ready to go. The match that everyone has been waiting for, the Wood Elf Mirror. All right. So, yeah, they should have had enough time, so we should be getting underway in a minute now. And then that should be the halfway point of the day. Sitting all right on time, looking to be about 3 hours-ish for the total duration. Dogs have been a little too quiet, so might have to take a little pause after this one to kind of see if they're causing any trouble, but they've been pretty tired after the last few days, so hopefully they're just sleeping upstairs. Looks like Zarix, I think, is ready. Just waiting on GGX, and we should be starting here in just a second. Hopefully everyone's having a good time so far, enjoying all of the great fights that we've had. Alright, we are loading on in, and then we'll be getting underway with our 5th match of the day. Alright, switch the scene over. It's going to be Wood Elves versus Wood Elves. I believe we'll have Zarix on the blue side, and GGX will be on red, though we'll see once they're loaded on in. Mirrors are always fun, trying to determine who's on whose side, calling things out. And usually this is a pretty quick fight overall. So let's take a quick look. So yep, yeah, RTK is on the blue and GGX will be on red for this one. For Zarx's army, we have Dryads for that front line. Pretty standard stuff against the Wood Elves, because they do have that magic damage, able to bypass a lot of the physical resist that is innate with the, I guess, the other Dryads and a lot of the other tree spears. They all have that physical resist, able to bypass. That is nice. Great Stag Knights going for the elite heavy cav. Full Vanguard Glade Riders with spears. They're going to be going right up close as both of these Waystalkers with a Spellweaver of High, actually, coming in with Tempest. We have Apotheosis as well as Soul Quench, I want to say is that one with, yeah, Soul Quench. Also coming in with Channeling Staff for some extra wins, Arcane Conduit, and Loic's Blessing, giving speed, stock, all that good stuff. So this is going to be a very interesting start on that side. So but we have some Dryads on GGX's side with some Glade Riders with spears. We have some Deepwood Scouts getting in some nice little bit of ranged damage. We have a Waystalker. We also have a Branch Wraith coming in with, it looks like that's either Melkos or the Pendulum. Kind of hard to tell with the shadow spells. So it is the Pendulum. We have Earthblood as well. And then we have the Sisters of Twilight going to be up in the sky. Going to be a little mindful of that Tempest, but does have their own little shots coming in. I think that is, so they do have that Conjoined Destiny, and then they have, I mean, they are Fire Swords Moving and the Eagle Quiver, so pretty much a Arrows of Kurnus in comparison. Otherwise, on his RX side, not a whole lot in terms of like range. It is pretty much just these Waystalkers that can fire up into the sky. A little risky, especially with Sisters of Twilight being a thing. Wild Hunters of Kurnus are underway, and here is just the mess that has begun as both of these Wild Hunters of Kurnus and both Wild Hunters of Kurnus actually both spawned on top of each other. But unfortunately, there are some Glade Rider spears right here are able to take out actually, no, these are the Great Stag Knights. Ooh, that is a major loss for Zarx here, as they are just going to be taken out. Very expensive cav very, very quickly. But otherwise, some of the other Great Stag Knights able to deal with these Dryads. But initially, things going rather poorly with that full Vanguard on both sides for RTK. So that initial loss of those Great Stag Knights. Now, they were able to dish out some pain, but overall, that was definitely not what they wanted to be dealing with that early on in the fight. And they do get a nice charge here, probably looking to deal with these Wild Hunters as the rest of the Great Stag Knights do charge forward. Get a little caught out by these Wild Hunters, or these Wild Riders here, as they're able to try and get into these Deepwood Scouts, and a point-blank shot into the middle of these units, doing a nice little bit of extra damage, just trying to get these Great Stag Knights to assist in here, as we get a Tempest going down right on top of the Sisters of Twilight. Now, the Sisters of Twilight are taking quite a bit of damage here. Of course, they do have that Conjoined Destiny, so if they don't take damage quickly enough, they can pretty much heal up very nicely. However, that Spellweaver is deciding to just dive right on in. A little bit of risky, considering I think the Sister Twilight does have the advantage, but with that Tempest and the shots coming in from these Waystalkers, those Sisters of Twilight are going to get pushed back. They have been pulling back themselves, taking a few shots into the Spellweaver, and is able to at least maintain the leadership, though the bounce power actually is in Zarx's favor, as that just the Dryads just able to do well enough, get the Glade Riders getting into these Deepwood Scouts. There just wasn't enough space for the GGX's forces on that initial deployment. So RTK is on the advantage here, especially with losing the Sisters of Twilight as they did, because that initial deployment definitely looked rather good for GGX, taking out one of the Great Stag Knights, but with the loss of the Sisters and all of their ranged, and those Arrows of Kurnus dropping down into that Branch Wraith, doing a nice bit of damage there. The mobility game is now in the favor of Zarx, as he's able to push back the Sister Twilight, and that is going to be a very quick fight, I believe, for RTK, as they are able to pull forward, despite some initial, I guess, deployment issues with overlapping units, as they lost some Great Stag Knights early on. So it was 3 total units. I think these guys, yeah, only getting 408. These guys, I believe, are the ones that died very, very quickly. It could have been these guys as well, but 734, 1200, still a lot of expense for not getting quite as much value, but these Wild Hunters got very good damage, 2,000 on them. The Glade Riders did rather well on all of the Dryads. Pretty much just engaging with other Dryads, but was able to win with the assistance of these Glade Riders and Wild Hunters, able to punch through the opponent's Dryads and get right on in. That Tempest as well was very, very nice, able to get some decent damage done on to the GGX's Wood Elves. Sister Twilight, unfortunately, did not get as much damage. Bringing them is at risk because, of course, of Tempest, bringing that high magic, but also just because in general you can get netted down. Waystalkers, Deepwood Scouts, all of that stuff is really a big threat to those Sisters of Twilight, and unfortunately they got pretty much singled out and taken out, because I was a little worried that Starks wasn't going to be able to deal with them very quickly, considering only his Waystalkers could really support, though luckily for him, his Spellweaver High on the Eagle did just fine. For the rest of the forces, 1,700 and 1,100 on the 2 Wild Riders, so very nice damage on that side, but yeah, just quick. Getting rid of all the Deepwood Scouts was the big thing for Zarks there, but that is going to put RTK up 1 more point on the ladder there, so it's going to be 4-2 going into the second half of the games. So let's switch over to the main screen. As for game 5, RTK does come up over GGX's Wood Elves. Yep, GG indeed. So now for our next one is going to be the next 2v2. We have the Dwarves, High Elves versus Greenskins and Beastmen. So for the people controlling, so we have Satsuma on the Dawi, J Phoenix will be commanding her High Elves, and then we'll have Waldsterben on the Greenskins and Ludwig on the Beastmen. So very much going to be a rush for GGX with Beastmen and Greenskins. And the Dwarves and High Elves do have a little bit of flexibility to an extent. So we have a 2v2, I believe, is this on Eschen? It is, okay, so this one should be the map. And, alright, I got the password right that time. Alright. So we got everyone loaded on in. It looks like they are all ready to go. Short and easy, as we're going to be getting into game 6. 2v2, 2 points on the board. Can GGX bring back the score to even as we get into the second half of the games? Or is RTX going to be, or RTK going to be pulling forward a little bit farther on that scorecard? So loading up into Eschen, so this is a little interesting deployment, so I'm probably going to be favoring the Greenskins and Beastmen in all honesty, so I'll take a switch over that scene just a second as we're loaded on in. Just the terrain itself does not necessarily suit too well to range. There's plenty of hills to kind of keep things either out of the range of direct fire, because that's pretty much what you're going to be seeing. Looks like a little bit slow here, but hopefully should be kind of pushing forward here. Haven't had any issues up until this point. But looks like, yeah, we should be loaded on in. So RTK is going to be the first one on the board. All right, looks things have stabilized. Looks like they're going to be going for a little bit of that air cheese here. Definitely the Greenskins expecting that rush, so not really expecting to be bringing too much on the force of anti-air, as we have 4 gyrocopters, brimstone guns, and I think the regular one as well. So we have brimstone, and brimstone. I think this one might be the only one, just the regular variant. 2 master engineers. We have Thork Ironbrow, and then for the rest we have Longbeards mixed in with some dwarf warriors with great weapons, some more dwarf warriors, and then the Grumbling Guard, the Longbeards with great weapons. And I believe these guys do give that immune to psychology, which will be rather helpful, especially in AoE, because not having that, so the old Grumblers gives them that extra bit. So that, yeah, they have the immune to psychology and that extra 9% vigor as well, which is very nice. So it's really given everything that nice perfect vigor. They themselves have that immune to psychology. So archers, yeah, and Thork for his abilities is going to be rolling on in with the Master of the Ancient Lore. He also does have the Locus of Power, the Rune of Doom, giving map-wide melee attack and can cause fear. Rune of Wrath and Ruin, a nice little AoE damage spell, and Rune of Speed, giving those stunty little dwarf legs a little bit of extra kick in their step. We have, for the High Elf army in support, we have some Dragon Princes mixed in. We have some Spearmen, kind of some Silverin Guard as well, looking to kind of just get a little support there, but they aren't be going for any of that direct fire, instead electing only for the Brimstone Gun to be getting that. And of course there is the 2 Master Engineers as well, but they don't have that ridiculous kind of range. I mean, 180 is still pretty nice. But then we have Frostheart Phoenix. We have Alariel, the Radiant, is going to be up in the skies, as she does have the Star of Avalorn Arcane Conduit Tempest, interestingly enough, against maybe any Harpies, and as well as the Shield Stone of Isha, which gives that nice little bit of physical resist. As for the GGX side, as they're getting ready to kind of get underway, we have some Night Goblins in the front. We have some Ungor herds as well, as kind of thrown into things. Orc boys. Now it looks like we have some Black Orcs as well, some heavy hitters looking to kind of punch through that armor of like the Silverin, as they'll do rather well against them. So a couple of units of those. Nice to be seeing that. As for we have Grom the Paunch, as he looks like he does bring his normal kit here. So he's bringing 3 of it with some Orc Boar Chariots on to boot. So he has Language of the Boys. We have the Great Un is here, and a Lucky Banner, pretty standard. Couple of Goblin Rock Lobbers. And then we have some Forest Camp Spider Riders. For the anti-air, they're going to have to rely on the Centaurs with throwing axes, 3 units of those, which should do all right. And then we have a couple of Minotaurs with great weapons as well. So really these Minotaurs are going to do rather well, because they're pretty much good against everything that the High Elves and the Dawi do have. And just a regular run-of-the-mill Beast Lord for the Lord, going to be on a Chariot. And then we have a Bray Shaman of Shadows. Looks like we have Enfeebling Foe, and I think that might be Pit of Shades in there as well. And it is. So Pit of Shades looking to kind of try and break through that tight formation of the opposing forces. Looks like we're trying to get, actually, yeah, Vindictive Glare looks like going off against those Gyrocopters. Overcasted, I believe, also has that Night Shroud, and so stock unspottable, can't really get sniped out unless you kind of pretty much fly right overhead of them. Gork will fix it, Vindictive Glare, and that's pretty much going to wrap things up on that side. Gyrocopters just going to be gunning right through the center. Now they do have to be very mindful of these Centaurs or throwing axes. Don't want to be going too right up the middle, but they are going to be getting some drops on top of these rock lobbers, looking to probably just outright rout this one unit here. The steam gun going to be trying to deal with the other, as Goblin rock lobbers do drop their models just in the time, otherwise might be a loss more than one here, but they are going to be routed off, and they're just going to fly right on overhead, make sure that they stay away. Other one getting a little low too, as the shots turn their attention to them, trying to get rid of that long range, force the Beastmen and the Greenskins to come into their formation where they're sitting nice, and they're going to have a nice little view as they approach from the tree line. Shouldn't have too many issues with that line of sight. And for the time being, yeah, all of that long range is shut down. Gyrocopters doing their best to kind of push things back, but all of these Centaurs throwing axes could just go right underneath these guys and get some nice shots up into them. I know at range it's kind of hard to hit those Gyrocopters, but you get those guys right up under them, and they're going to be able to kind of take a few of them out of the sky, kind of soften things up for the rest of the army, because they do need to be dealt with. Can't really let them just fire away all of their shots, because they're going to get some pretty insane value if you just kind of let them do their own thing. But the rest of the armies are going to be pushing on forward, looking to get right on into melee. Don't want to be sitting too far out. Those Lothern Seaguard archers going to be plucking away their shots at the approaching forces. I mean, the Night Goblins going to be throwing in. This is the Arwar, so this is going to be the 8-peak loonies. Really the only Night Goblins you're going to be seeing at this point, considering how their spinning loons has to recharge in melee. They're really the only Night Goblin that are able to do anything with that, considering they have Unbreakable. Everything else pretty much is going to get beaten down. They're going to be charged forward ahead of the rest of their army as Centaurs with throwing axes continue, just kind of pluck away. One of the Gyrocopters has been able to kind of peel off to deal with the one returning unit, and the other one has completely shattered, so don't have to worry about that one. So all the units just going to be kind of raining overhead as we get a nice drop here, as we get an Earthblood as well, going to be healing up those Gyrocopters, having not lost a single unit left, and those Night Goblins taking a bunch of damage early on. Pit of Shade's going to be dropping down, trying to catch those Gremlin Guard, going to be catching just the edge of the Lothern Seaguard. Not doing a ton of damage so far, but it is going to be pucking away at about a quarter of their HP as the Gremlin Guard now come in to support that front line against the Ungor herd. and there is one of those spinning loons, probably going to be the only one coming off this fight, as it just gets off in time to go through those Longbeards. Rune of Wrath and Ruin missing most of that Ungor herd, as now Throgg charges in with the Frostfire Phoenix against Grom the Paunch, as we do pop that Rune of Doom, I believe is what is going on, as I heard at least one of the spells. Rune of Doom, yep, there it is, 24 melee attack, and that fear against all these units is going to really be helping against all of these units. Yep, Elf Magic healing up the Dwarven Steel. Rather interesting lore of life metal casting. As we get that fiery ring of Throgg going right through those Night Goblins as well. So there actually is some regular Night Goblins mixed into things, but those Black Orcs still sitting very, very healthy. And I think these Brimstone guns going to want to be turning their attention to them at some point here, but we still have to worry about these Minotaurs coming in. We do have the Dragon Princes coming in to support, with the Minotaurs putting pressure on one side while the Black Orcs are putting pressure on the northern reaches, as yeah, these Minotaurs now are going to be charging forward. Definitely be like, ooh, some Dragon Princes there. Let's go right in on that, and a beautiful Pit of Shades right on top of all these units. It's going to be getting a little bit of the Black Orcs mixed in as well, but it's going to be hitting the Silverin and the Lothern Seaguard, doing a lot of damage to them. And the Dragon Princes do have an Earthblood popped on them, as they're able to pull on out of that engagement, as Thorek does kind of pull back into his own units. Both of the Master Engineers plucking away their shots, giving that nice bit of support, as that Beast Lord taking a bunch of damage, as that Gyrocopter with Brimstone Gun focusing it down. Frostheart Phoenix, I'm going ahead. Nothing really to threaten that Frostheart Phoenix at this point. The Priest Lord is just going to be wanting to put some distance between him and it. All of the heavy hitters are kind of in that back line, as we have both of the Minotaur's great weapons, the Black Orcs as well, continuing to just grind their way through the Silverin Guard and the Spearmen as they try and kind of push down the hill here. And I mean, even the Centaurs throwing us, they have plenty of ammunition left, though the Great Shaman of Shadows, who's gotten a couple nice casts off so far, is going to be routing. It might be a good idea for the High Elves to kind of peel off, or the one of the Gyrocopters to kind of peel off one of their units to kind of deal with that. It looks like we hear another one of those runes going off. Not sure which rune it is. Looks like the Master Rune of Speed has gone off, giving a little bit of extra melee attack and some speed to these Longbeards as they try and push back these Minotaurs charging into their lines. But everything is really kind of collapsing upon the High Elves and the Dawi formation, as yeah, Orc Boys, all of these Centaur throwing axes slowly whittling things down, but they have taken some heavy losses in the meantime. And Lariel, the Frostheart, all of these Brimstone guns still sitting rather healthy, so some of the heavy hitters on RTK side sitting nice and pretty, as the balance power showing their favor here in the late stages of this fight. Orc War Chariots trying to kind of get in as well, trying to at least allow these Minotaurs to maybe have a chance of coming back into the fight later on. But all these Brimstone guns have just been able to fire throughout the course of the fight, and it looks like that Brave Shaman has returned to the field. It's getting another one of those Pit of Shades right on top of these Spearmen, and all of the rest of the units kind of just taken a bit of a charge from the Centaurs. Black Orcs still sitting rather nice in terms of HP, but there is that Star of Avalorn as all of the Brimstone guns and all the Gyrocopters try and get into that area, heal themselves up to full. All of the skirmish fire coming in from the Centaurs throwing axes. I mean, at this point, one unit is the only one that has any decent ammunition left. One of the Black Orcs has ended up routing, so really they are not going to be able to deal with these Brimstone guns in the slightest, as the Master Engineers still have free reign, plucking away at some shots on the Centaurs, dealing with them. But yeah, all these Brimstone guns at this point are going to be able to just have their way with the rest of the Greenskin and Beastmen army, just going to be able to get shots on Black Orcs, any unit that they want to. The Brave Shaman of Shadows probably is going to be singled out pretty soon here, but I guess those Brimstones are just pretty much focusing on the Black Orcs, able to get them out, and that is going to be army losses, as the pretty much the Air Force of the Dawi carrying the day, as they're able to really do quite well in that regard, unable to really kind of shut things down on that front. So that is going to put the scorecard up to 6-2 at this point. So I'll update that score and go over the after battle report before getting into our next set of games. So Thorek getting 500. Both of the Master Engineers not really doing all too much. They were getting some shots in, but for the most part, They're just kind of there for support. Not really, yeah, I'm not really getting any of the super good shots, and most of that was going to be done by the gyrocopters. So taking a look at the rest of the units, some heavy armor. Grumbling Guard did rather well, getting 1141. Rather nice there. Gyrocopters 800, 1788 on that one, 1341 and 1611. So tons of value on those gyrocopters. Definitely bringing out the air squad. Unfortunately, ground opponents getting shot down pretty effectively there. Rest of the units, the Black Orcs did some damage, but again, not really enough. And all of these Goblin Rock Labbers just got taken out almost immediately. Those Centaurs with throwing axes really needed to be on the ball, and they needed at least probably some more range because of just the threat of gyrocopters in general. You needed to have something that can deal with it. You bring some more just regular archers or something of that nature, for like greenskins and whatever. They have some armor-piercing missile cav, which would have been a nice tool to be bringing. For the High Elves on that side, the High Elves, Alariel, the Radiant, the rest of the units not really going to be doing the Silverin Guard themselves. One unit did okay, getting 847. Archers, the Dragon Princes on one hand got 1300. Frostheart, nothing too great. So really, it does look like it was pretty much just the air squad that was the big carry in this fight, and really just, yeah, Beastmen and Greenskins not having the tools necessary to really deal with them. So yeah, we have some of the throwing axes here, just 920, 787, 808, some of the best performers for the Beastmen, but unfortunately they just needed to bring a little bit more in that anti-air in this fight. So I'll switch on back to the main screen here. Looks like we may have had a couple skipped frames, but overall it looked like everything went pretty well. So 6-2 going into the last 4 games. Plenty of points still left on the board. We have points for each of the 1v1s. 4 and 8 points left on the field. So the next one is Beastmen versus Chaos. So let's take a look and see. It looks like just a few messages. And the next one is, yeah, Swarv will be on the Beastmen, and Waldsterben will be on Chaos on Pillar of Bone. This GG's all around, and we'll find our next lobby. Let's see if that one is up and ready. All right, let's see. What can I find? I do not see it. Oh, Felix must be playing in his... Are we skipping? Because the next one should be Chaos, or it should be Beastmen versus Chaos. Felix is playing in the Chaos versus Bretonia. So... Oh, I see it. There it is. Waldsterben versus Swarv. I cannot spectate. Oops, I think the lobbies might be bugged. Alright, so I'm going to back out. Someone might be in. I'll have to send a message to Swarv real quick. Alright. So sometimes the spectator slot's a little finicky, where you have to, even if you have one open, someone can't actually join, so I might just need to open up one more. So hopefully Swarv sees that message and I'll be getting on, because I do see the lobby. I just can't join it just yet. Or Waldsterben may have been the one, so I'll send him a message too. Might be his lobby. Oops. Okay. Alright, so now I should be able to join. There it is. Alright, we are loaded in for our next one. So we have Waldsterben on Chaos and Swarv on the Beastmen on Pillar of Bone. Nice close match, going to be fairly favoring Beastmen in that regard. Though against Chaos, they have plenty of similar tools to bring to the fight. So we'll see what we're going to be facing off against on both sides. GGX definitely will be wanting to try and bring a game back into their fold. Alright, Swarv is readied up. And while they're doing that, I'm going to just take a quick little peek to see how the dogs are doing. So I'll be right back though. They should be loading on in, and then we should be getting underway. Alright, dogs are sitting nice and relaxed. Alright, hopefully everyone's going to be loading on in here pretty quick, but there we go. Alright, we're going to go over Chaos first for GGX. So we're going to be seeing a couple of Exalted Heroes sitting up in the sky on their Manticore, going to be eliminating one of the downsides to the Feral Manticore, so they will not be rampaging in this fight. Otherwise, it is going to be a lot of infantry spread across this field. We do have some skirmish casts with some Marauder Horsemen, mixed in 4 units of those, and it is going to be Archaon, the ever-chosen, for the Lord, as he does have Standard Eye. We have a Burning Head, we have Fireball, and that is going to be it for his kit with Kindle Flame. So he's going to be bringing any of his Slayer of Kings or anything of that nature. We have Chaos Warriors with Great Weapons mixed in with some Chaos Warriors with Halberds, so some heavy armor on that front line. We have some Forsaken as well, who have 85 armor to boot as well, so that's nothing to slouch at. A couple of Chaos Marauders with Great Weapons on the far side, so a lot of armor piercing potential, and then just some regular Chaos Marauders in that initial front line to get a little bit of shields there, because otherwise all these units are going to be unshielded. Very straightforward for Chaos. Now, as for the Beastmen side of things, we do have those Bestigors, as they're going to be going forward, looking to punch through that armor, but they have some armor on themselves, which all that Great Weapons on the other side is going to be what Chaos is kind of probably expecting for. Some Minotaurs with Great Weapons, we have some Gore Herds, and then for the Vanguard units, we have some Tuskor Chariots with the Ray Shaman of Wild coming in with, I believe, we have the Jagged Dagger, which is some nice, it's pretty much Arcane counter, but it recharges when in melee, so power recharge, power reserves. We have Traitorkin, and we have Devolve as well for some nice speed reduction, melee speed, all that good stuff for some bit of control. The Grog Hooves of Wolf's Ruin, these guys have regen, and poison as well for their missile strength, so that'll be quite nice for the Lord. It is going to be a Doom Bull, going to be charging on forward. Looks like he has the, I believe that is Tormentor Sword. Or Hellfire Sword. Yeah, they don't have Tormentor Sword. Like, it looked similar. Fireball going out early on. We also have Slaughterer's Call and Blood Greed on that Doom Bull. as Archaon is going to be getting a little bit of a charge in trying to pick off some of these Tuskor chariots, as well as the Bracem get a little bit of damage there before the rest of the infantry does kind of charge on forward. That Doom Bull and these Minotaurs are going to be a little big of a threat for him. We have a couple of Chaos Warhounds with poison on the far flanks here. Going to be looking to put some harass in on these Marauder Horsemen as they do pull them all back, and really these Marauder Horsemen, that is going to be a good catch actually for them, getting a nice engage in that in melee. They should be able to do quite well. I think they are engaged, or they might just be shooting at range, but if they get all of those combined, they should be able to deal with that harass in the back. As the Bracem in a while, though, taking a massive bit of hit from that Exalted Hero. Exalted Hero doing quite well, so that Goon Squad with the Exalted Hero and Archaon, though Archaon taking a few hits from the Doom Bull as he does kind of get some nice shots off, but those two Exalted Heroes are causing problems in the flanks against all of the chariot units, and they're doing a very good job at answering in that regard, as taking out the spells very early on. They're trying to charge through. These spears aren't going to be holding them back, at least for the time being, but it does end up routing. Hopefully, it should be coming back to get a few more winds of magic onto the field, but Chaos so far doing rather well. They've lost a bit of their infantry. Forsaken Chaos, whereas with great weapons on that front, these Marauders are getting pushed off. All of these Skirmish Cav as well taking a bit of damage, but balance power is slightly in the favor of the Beastmen, though that is often going to be the case in Beastmen fights. That's just how their units kind of are weighing on in. Bastigor is doing rather well on this front too, though Chaos Warriors with great weapons are able to dish out the pain, though those Forsaken not having as much of a good time as they would be liking to try and deal with this infantry. Really, though, they need to allow those Chaos Warriors with great weapon to go in that regard. But that Doom Ball is just pretty much Archaon just doesn't want to go anywhere near that Doom Ball. Exalted Hero as well, going to be trying to dive down, but doesn't want to be caught in with those Minotaurs. I think they'll be able to do rather well, but all of these horsemen getting pushed back farther and farther, trying to kind of come in to screen these guys out, but they're just going to get caught themselves, and that'll be one more of the Skirmish Cav taken out of the fight, and all of them just getting pushed to the edges as the all of the Chaos Warriors keeping them at bay. And we do have one of the horsemen did return, but this fight in the center ranks here, Forsaken charging into the rear of these Gore herds, but the two units of Bestigors are doing a rather decent job at kind of cleaning things up. But Archaon going to be trying to free up some space for his own units, especially with the Exalted Hero diving in as well. Should help win this engagement before the Doom Bull and two or more Bestigor units are going to be charging in for support. Doom Bull going to be getting a little bit stuck in with his charge, trying to go for that Exalted Hero first, but now Archaon is going to be mixed in, though he just kind of pushes on forward. Don't know if he necessarily wants to engage with the Doom Bull. Doesn't look like he's trying to avoid him, but with that Exalted Hero should be able to at least deal some decent damage, because if you ignore that Doom Bull, especially in this close proximity, that Doom Bull is going to be getting some nice bit of damage off. Looks like we have a Burning Head going to be going right through the line, going to be going through Bestigors, but for the most part they're going to be able to resist a lot of that damage with that high armor. Only really the Gore herd that I think had already ended up getting routed off is going to be taking most of that incoming damage, though it does go through those spears. That does a little bit of damage on that front, but now Archaon stands alone. Those Exalted Heroes needed to come in and assist him, but instead one was kind of off chasing that Bracem in a while, who has returned anyways. But really, all of these Exalted Heroes needed to stay by Archaon, the Ever-Chosen, in this fight here, because Archaon cannot fight off the Doom Bull as well as all these Minotaurs, these Bestigors. He is just getting swamped by very elite units, and down he does go, ends up shattering here, and with that gone, it looks like that is going to be curtains for the rest of the Chaos Forces, and the Beastmen pull forward in another win for RTK. As things were looking a little dicey there, losing the caster so early on to that Exalted Heroes. But yeah, the Exalted Heroes, they just ended up getting too spread out in that fight, and they needed to stick together, stay with Archaon, because that Doom Squad is a scary thing with Archaon and two Exalted Heroes on Manticores, and they can just dish out some massive pain. But instead, they kind of got separated, and then they just got, Archaon got broken apart, and both the Exalted Heroes are still sitting at a pretty decent health. But unfortunately, that was all she wrote in that regard. All of the horsemen as well getting kind of popped early on. Despite the outnumbering these Chaos Warhounds, they really needed to kind of collapse it, but instead that just allowed the Chaos Warhounds to do very well. The Minotaurs did very well. The Grogkas got 900 Tuskors as well, and then Bestigors, very nice trades throughout the fight. Definitely having plenty of them in the fight at the end. Doom Bull, almost 1,500, doing very nice in that. So again, RTK going to be pulling forward one more game. And now we're going to be getting into another of the 1v1s. Chaos versus Bretonnia. It is going to be Felix on Chaos, and Ludwig will be having the Bretonnians. So update that, and then we can get into our next lobby. and get things underway, and that should be already ready. Loading on in. Yeah, Vestigor's definitely fun. Hey, Merc, good seeing you here. Merc of the RTK. I don't think I've seen you in chat before. All right, both sides looking ready. I know they were set before this last game. I think we didn't have word until like just after that 2v2 if they were going to be ready for the last match we just had. So they should have their armies ready to go, and we should be getting right on in to the next one. Well, thank you, Merc. All right, so I think there's been a lot of these clan wars. I think a lot of them are getting played today. Just kind of a good day to get things done. Because before I kick things off, I heard of a few others getting played. I think XMT might have been playing. ODM, I think, was playing today. And then on top of that, we've got like three other tournaments going on. So definitely a very Warhammer heavy day, but I don't know, fall is in the air. It's getting a little chilly, so people coming inside. I guess not all zones of the world is going to be fall, but around here it's definitely a bit cooler weather than what we've been having. All right, loaded on in, switch the scene on over. And we'll be going over the Chaos Forces of Felix to start things off for RTK. So against Bretonnians is going to be bringing those Chaos Warriors with great weapons. I'm definitely going to be favoring these guys over any halberd units. Just getting the charge off against the Bretonnians. Any of their cavalry, they'll do very nice, just how the collisions end up working. Now, they do have to be a little worried about, because bringing this many great weapons, you have none of just regular Chaos Warriors, you have none of the regular Marauders, so you have no shielded units. So against any of the Bretonnian peasant archers, they're going to be a little susceptible to that incoming fire. Chaos Warhounds, we do have the Mirror Guard though, so that is a nice little anchor. We have some Marauder Horsemen. Well, I guess it's not 103 here. It's like 65, I think, in terms of temperature, and that's Fahrenheit. So we have Prince Sigvald the Magnificent going to be coming in for Felix, and he does have his auric armor. That is all he's going to be bringing. So he does have that regeneration, of course, that perfect vigor that really combines rather nicely. Going to be bringing double spells casters here. We have fire and death. So we have Spirit Leech, and for fire, if it lets me look at it, is going to be bringing Fireball and Burning Head. And that is going to be pretty much it for the Chaos side. For the Bretonnians, we do have Peasant Yeoman Archers, and the thing is, against the Skirmish Cav of Chaos, these guys actually outrange them by a decent margin, 125 to only 80 on the Horsemen, 90 on Horsemasters. I don't think there's any Horsemasters here today, though I love Horsemasters over Horsemen almost any day of the week. We have a couple of Pegasus Knights as well. We have a Damsel of Life bringing Earthblood and Awakening of the Wood, as well as King Lewin Leon Curris. He looks like to be bringing most of his own kit, as he does have the Beloved Son of Bretonia, Stand Your Ground, Lion Shield, and Sword of Couronne. Some nice debuffs there, especially for that armor debuff with that Sword of Couronne. We have Peasant Mob mixed in for that front line, and then you have those Peasant Bowman Archers with some Trebs as well. We'll be pulling Chaos into them. Could be a little risky if there had been a Hell Cannon on the other field, because I don't think Field Trebuchets really... they probably can do pretty decently against them, against a Hell Cannon, but only bring in one just to pull the fight in their direction. And that's really kind of the biggest thing with that, is like, it's not that expensive to bring a trebuchet, and if you do get outmatched in range, it's not the worst thing in the world. And versus kind of going half into that, a couple of halberds in the back, But otherwise, it is pretty much going to be some cavalry with the Knights Errant. Not a whole lot of heavy cav. All that's going to be with their flyers, those Pegasus Knights, as King Lewin's going to be circling overhead. Not really anything that can really deal with them either. These Marauder Horsemen just aren't going to have the DPS to deal with like the Pegasus Knights. And so King Lewin's going to get a nice charge into these Chaos Warriors with great weapons, as they do get a charge in. And really with these Pegasus Knights, it does prevent that charge for the great weapons. So that's actually a rather good idea, considering how the this matchup has gone with the cavalry just getting charged by those great weapons. It can do really well by just avoiding that altogether with those Pegasus Knights. Burning Head going to be trying to roast through these peasant men-at-arms and polearms, but instead it is going to be going right through these peasant bowmen, doing a ton of damage to them, taking them down half health on that charge. Might just be breaking them in the process of doing this. So very nice cast there, looking to try and bait out the attention without kind of playing at going for those other peasant bowmen. So rather nice cast on that front. Trebuchets are getting at a little interesting position because they're up on the hill firing down, and they're going to be firing over the heads of a lot of these chaos forces. Probably would like to kind of orientate themselves, kind of fire down the line at this point. But all of these great weapons have quickly broken through that front line, getting into the back, and now that's going to be pressure on the field trebuchets, the peasant bowmen, all going to be getting pushed back on all fronts, and the peasant or the mounted yeoman archers are going to be hard pressed to really kind of stem the tide, as these Marauder Horsemen trying to getting sandwiched by those Knights Errant in the back, and those Mirror Guards sitting very healthy at this late stage of the fight. King Lewin, though, trying to deal with one of the spellcasters, unable to really land any of those hits, unfortunately for him. And the rest of the units now going to be threading through those holes in the formation, as all of the infantry pretty much being put to rout. And the Knights Errant trying to chase down these Chaos Warhounds with poison, but they're going to be able to outspeed them no problem at all. More of the Halberdiers all getting kind of picked apart, so really the infantry is getting beaten down, and with that, the support that the Pegasus Knights really do need, as these Peasant Bowmen, these Pox variants, are going to be wanting to get that poison into those fights, but when they're getting pushed back, especially with the Chaos Warhounds, they need those Knights Errant now to come in to assist those Warhounds. They chased far too long trying to catch them, and those Warhounds just circled right back around and leaving these Knights Errant in the dust to deal with these Mirror Guard, and those Peasant Bowmen are now going to be getting pushed right off the field, no problems whatsoever. Awakening the Wood going into the middle of things there, as these Chaos Warriors with great weapons are getting beaten down by all of this cav with King Lewin in support, and the Pegasus Knights take off to look for more engagements elsewhere, as they are going to be looking to kind of regroup and try and pick things off. Mounted Yeomen just doing some nice pressure on to these Marauder Horsemen, but they need to really be, the flying units need to be assisting here, this front line, just trying to get space, because if they just ignore this, you're going to lose. I mean, you're probably going to lose these Peasant Bowmen anyways. Both of these Chaos Warhounds are going to be getting a ton of value, just going to be sweeping right on through. You only have one unit of polearms there to keep things back, so one of those Warhounds might need to take the bullet there, but the others should fall upon those Peasant Bowmen with no problem whatsoever. King Lewin and all the Pegasus Knights are going to be diving in, getting a little bit of healing off onto these Pegasus Knights with that Earthblood. But they are going to be pulling it right back out again. There's just so much infantry left for Chaos at this point, and there isn't anything that can really stand and just either shoot or fight for Bretonnians. You have some polearms, but they're really getting spread out, as the Knights Errant trying to catch more of these Warhounds with poison, but they just need to stay in support of the rest of their units. And we do have one unit in here that is getting beaten down, and it is the Damsel of Life getting caught out. Unfortunate for Bretonnia, as she is going to be pulling free of the mass of units, but I don't think she's going to be a whole lot of much use in this late stage. One of these Warhounds, which it looks like that's exactly what's going to happen. They're trying to pull on out, trying to get on top of what doesn't matter at this point. Damsel of Life has been shattered, and balance power shifting more into Chaos's favor here, as Bretonnians trying to get rid of these Mirror Guard. This is a really good opportunity for them to do this anyways. They're very separated. There's nothing that can get to them soon enough. You have the Warhounds, which could maybe get some support in, but all of these Marauder great weapons, Chaos Warriors with great weapons, they are a little too far away to really do a thing. I think they could have stayed engaged in melee for a little bit longer, but a Spirit Leech is going to be hitting those Pegasus Knights, dropping down a few models there, so that Spirit Leech has been getting some good value at just whittling down those Pegasus Knights, and especially with the Damsel of Life gone at this point, all that damage is going to do very nice work on that front. Mounted Yeomen reaching the end of their ammunition, and with that is pretty much their usefulness. They're not really all that great in melee. Their range is really the only kind of big advantage against those Marauder Horsemen. And at this point, all of these Chaos Warhounds are going to be swarming into the back line. King Lewin with the rest of the Pegasus Knights going to be charging forward, doing some nice damage to the Chaos Sorcerer Fire, getting some nice hits in. Should be able to rout it off, even with all these Warhounds trying to kind of free up that caster. But caster does end up shattering, I believe. I don't think, oh yeah, just going to be shattering off the field. So that is one caster down, but there is still the Chaos Sorcerer of Death, who does get another Spirit Leech, and I think that's going to just finish off these Pegasus Knights outright, down to 4 models, 3, and that is going to be a concession by Ludwig, as there just wasn't enough stuff left. King Lewin was still sitting healthy, but there's just so many units left. I mean, Prince Sigvald, you still had to deal with Prince Sigvald at that point. With King Lewin running around all game, he would have been quite tired, and I think Prince Sigvald would have been able to win that fight, or at least do very well against King Lewin, especially with all the rest of the assistants. So Prince Sigvald only getting 500. The 2 casters not really getting any damage. There's a lot of mobility, so like the Firecaster and everything else had a bit of a problem getting into that. So it looks like we have our next match ready to go. We'll quickly finish up going over the rest of these armies. Chaos Warriors doing rather nice. The Mirror Guard standing tall, but really, oh wow, the Marauder Horsemen getting 1,600 on them. 240, not so great on that side, but all of the Warhounds, I imagine at least a few of them did rather well. 600, 700, so those guys got into the Peasant Bowmen, pushing them back. There just wasn't enough to hold back that front line. And maybe really, yeah, Knights Errant, I mean, maybe you have to go with something a little bit better, like Questing Knights or something of that nature, instead of the Pegasus Knights. Mounted Yeomen didn't do all too great. Field Trebuchets, rest of the units, King Lewin only getting 985. Rest of the units just kind of quickly going to be browsing through those. Otherwise, yeah, just probably just too much infantry, too much armor to deal with, as Chaos just went super wide with all of that, just making it really hard to do that. So that's it for that game. So that's going to be putting RTK up 1 more score. So that's going to make it 8-2 going into the next of the 2v2s. So we'll take a look at that main screen. It is going to be Bretonnia Dark Elves versus Norska and High Elves. All right, so that lobby should be all set. Got the invite for it. That's only to join the game, so I'll have to find it. (2v2). All right, we are in. Excellent. All right, looks like we have Kamba Perro on Bretonnia versus Human Boy Yes Yes on the Dark Elves. And then we'll be having Geraldo will be on Norska, and Mr. Duddles will be commanding the High Elves for GGX. And the map looks like it is going to be Southern Chaos Waste, so a rather wide open map. Plenty of space to maneuver. Very flat too, so you're not going to have to worry too much about any line of sight issues, though none of these factions really have any units that would be affected by that anyways. So I'll let them know ready to go. We can get on into the next game. There's only 2 games left, 5 points still left on the board. But with that, the score is 8-2, and with only 5 points left, that does mean RTK has been able to clinch that victory. After losing the first 2, things looked a little bit sketchy, but they've been very strong throughout the remaining fight, as they've been able to pull up 8 points straight against GGX. I'm just going to see how things fare for the next one, but there's some very good games up till this point. So loading into the next one, and then we can switch on over and get things underway. So just team games left at this point. All the 1v1s are done. We are loaded on in. Update camera controls, and then we'll switch the scene over. And wait for everyone to load on in. We'll have our Dark Elf bar at the top. Yeah, for Bretonnia Dark Elves, I mean, definitely going to be having a bit of mobility available on both sides. Plenty of skirmish, plenty of nice, quick, either cheap mobility. Bretonians have more of that heavy, so I wouldn't be surprised if they go for a very mobile build here on RTK side versus GGX. They have some good skirmish as well. Lever and Reavers, Horsemasters, Horsemen. We could be seeing quite a big presence from that, but we're also going to be probably seeing a bit more on the I wouldn't be surprised to see more on the heavy monsters with potentially mammoths or some. I wouldn't be surprised to see any dragons either at this point. But let's see what both we have in store for each side. I've also seen matchups with Norska in the 2v2s where they go entirely with their mobility. I think that was a few clan battles ago, so we'll see what we kind of see on that. So it looks like a little bit of mix on both fronts. But for RTK side, for the Bretonians, I guess we'll go with them first, led by Kamba, we have Peasant Mobs, pretty standard there. We have Knights of the Realm and Knights of the Lionhearted, the ROR version, which does give them that magic damage, so that's rather nice to have, as well as Fear. Otherwise, nothing too special there. Not going to be seeing any of the super, I guess, expensive, like, questing knights or anything of that nature. We have a couple of Feral Manticores for the Dark Elf side. We have a bunch of Scourge Runners, 3 units of those, and then some Witch Elves mixed in with some Black Ark Corsairs, looking to really kind of punch through that infantry side. And the Witch Elves do have that Madness of Cain, which is a rather nice little bit. There's a kind of rampage things, a little bit of pretty much causing your opponent to lose control of their armies bit by bit, getting that damage in, and at the right time that can be very, very effective. Some Peasant Bowmen with pox arrows as well, getting that poison into the fight, always nice, cheap in range support. Morathi for the Dark Elves for the Lord, and Morathi does have the Wand of Caradon as well as Soul Stealer, Heartrender, and the Dark Sword with Enchanting Beauty. Pretty standard for her, especially running with the 2 Manticores. And then we have a couple of Paladins also going to be up in the sky, so the air squad's going to be rather intense with 5 single entities flying up. Paladins just on their Pegasus, one of which does have that Guardian, and then I believe I saw the Fey Enchantress going to be on the ground. So nothing too surprising from either side on this. Fey Enchantress does have Earthblood. Dwellers below, Arcane Conduit, and I believe that is the Chalice of Potion, or the Favor of the Fae. And that is going to be it, I think, for that army for the most part. I don't think I forgot anything else. And now as for the GGX side of things, the front line is going to be lots of infantry. On this side is lots of spearmen for the front line coming from the High Elves. We do have Aletha Nar for the Lord. Does have, I believe, the Moon Bow. Not too familiar with his kit, but I don't think he has the Moon Bow as well as Mislead, so that little mirage that he can get. He has the Stone of Midnight, which affects allies in range, giving that missile resist, and the Shadow Crown, so melee defense, and 15% speed when an enemy is in his ability range. Rest of the units, Marauder Spearmen mixed in with Marauders with Great Weapons Berserkers for the Norskins. So seeing probably a little bit more Spearmen than you'd expect to see, even against like the High Elves and stuff. Some Lothar Sea Guard lined up behind them with some just regular archers. We have Shaman Sorcerer of Death, we have Wolfric the Wanderer, and then some Silvering Guard with 3 Skin Wolves, couple of Marauder Horsemen. Highly doubt that's Horse Masters. There's too many funds thrown into the rest of things. And that is going to be it for there. And it is a light caster with the Nets of Admatok and Shem's Burning Gaze, and a nice moon bow going right into that Scourge Runner Chariot, doing a nice bit of damage. Not able to take one down, but doing a nice bit of damage. And a little bit of Earthblood going to be going off, healing that up. Alright, and if one of the mods can block that. And then, yeah, the rest of the, just at this point, things going to be underway as both sides can be pushing forward. Nothing really heavy on the skirmish, so, like all the horsemen, there's just not enough of them. You do have the 3 Scourge Runners, which can provide a nice bit of skirmish, but both sides pretty much going to be looking to get engaged in melee, especially with, with all of the archers. They're going to be pretty much content to just force all the peasant mobs to really push up, because that's a lot of ranged fire coming in from that front. Here, I'm just going to this real quick. All right. All right, so yeah, things getting underway. Oh, the Witch Elves rampaging off these Marauders with great weapons as they kind of charge forward. The great weapons really going to be losing out a lot with their armor piercing. They're just going to not be trading as effectively. And Spearmen coming in. Witch Elves going to be probably wanting to pull back as they're taking quite a bit of fire so far. I hear a Dwellers Below going off in the back here as it is going to be catching the Lothern Sea Guard, the Marauder Spearmen, and all of those units. I'm doing a nice bit of damage to them. It is going to continue going, so taking off half health on the Marauder Spearmen, so a lot of it there. I hear a boat going down at some point. I don't know where exactly that ended up, but in this back unit here, the Skin Wolves are taking a ton of damage so far, trying to get in onto these Scourge Runners, which normally would be a very nice catch for these Skin Wolves. However, just with the support of all the Knights of the Realm, the two Paladins as well are able to make quick work of all of these Skin Wolves. Now, the Skin Wolves did do quite a bit of damage to the Scourge Runners, but the Scourge Runners are able to survive. I mean, they still have all of their models left despite getting low. Skin Wolves are actually ending up shattering on that flank. The other guys are engaged with spears, not really wanting to be engaged over on that front. And on the far flanks, we do have the Feral Manticores kind of diving in with the Marauder Spearmen, well, I guess rampaging into these guys. Other ones are trying to pull out, and it looks like we do have a Soul Stealer going down. It is able to catch the Lothern Sea Guard, only one of them. The other archers are able to stay outside of that, so it's nice to be seeing that fix on that front. Otherwise, all the shots just kind of continue to kind of pluck away, and we do have, I think that was a one of Coradon, sounded like by the looks of things, going down into the middle of these Spearmen and the Lothern Sea Guard as Morathi just continues to really kind of get things, as the Murderous Prowess is going to be popped for all of the Dark Elf forces, getting a nice buff to that infantry as they do very well in that regard. But things are very spread out here. The High Elves and the Norskins are really kind of putting a pressure on the center ranks, while the flanks are getting pressured by the RTK forces, and they are doing quite well on those flanks, but it's going to start hemming in the rest of the GGX forces, especially with these Paladins and these Knights of the Realm kind of pulling on in, looking to be getting on top of these Lothern Sea Guard. Now, these guys do have bonus versus large, but getting a side charge like this against these Lotherns, you're going to be able to quickly break them down. We do have Wulfric the Wanderer coming in as well. He does have that Hunter Champions, but I don't think he's been using any of those on him. The Lethanar is also kind of close for support. And I did hear, it looks like some more shots just kind of raining in on the front. Vanchest has taken a little bit of damage, but the thing's getting really kind of pushed back. All of these archers are far out of range in assisting these backline support, and but that Soul Stealer going down, able to catch these Lothern Sea Guard, those Spearmen, able to do a lot of damage there. And really, Morathi is engaging with Wulfric, but Wulfric, for the longest while, was kind of turning his attention elsewhere, and kind of still is, and definitely wants to pull out. Doesn't want to be taking free damage there. He does not have the healing that Morathi is able to get, and actually that was just a mirage there for Lethanar. Now, both of the Paladins dumping down onto Wulfric, and I think that's pretty much going to be curtains for Wulfric. I don't think he's going to be getting out of that fight, and now he's going to be able to turn their attention elsewhere to that Deathcaster, and then eventually to Lethanar and the other Mage of Light. But it looks like one of the Feral Manticores has gone off in pursuit of a Leth, and that is the real version. His Mirage has been lost to the wayside, and things just kind of still off in the back fronts. There's just not a whole lot of support left for the High Elves and Norskins. There's just some spears left, and the Norskin spears, they really just aren't going to be able to do so well. They have bonus versus large, but again, they're just really cheap units, not going to be able to hold off as well as like the Silverin, for example, as they will actually be able to probably pressure off these Knights of the Realm here. But with losing all of the heroes for the Norskins and just all this, the mobility that the Paladins are allowing for RTK, Lethanar isn't going to have any room to really escape, nothing to really put enough pressure on them, and with the balanced power as far as it is, I don't think we're going to be seeing any comeback, especially hitting all of the remaining infantry pretty much with a Soul Stealer. And I think that is going to be army losses, and that is going to be all she wrote. Scourge Runners do end up actually routing, actually able to maybe sustain a bit of this pocket here, but I think at this point it is pretty much a done deal. I don't think you're going to be coming back from that. All the single entities a little too healthy, and that Mage of Light is going to be the target next from all of these single entities. The Knights of the Lionheart get a nice charge into the remaining of the Silverin Guard. They end up getting terror routed, and with that, that is army losses, and that is going to be game set for there. And take a look at the after battle report for each side. The Dark Elves, Morathi getting 1,700. Those Soul Stealers really doing some pretty good work on that front. One of the Spears actually ended up getting 974. Pretty surprising. Witch Elves got beaten down pretty quickly. And then all the Scourge Runners, not doing anything too ridiculous. Both of the Feral Manticores, one did over 1,000. As for the Bretonnians, Fey Enchanters 800, both of the Paladins, nothing really to write home about. Just good support. All of the Pox Arrows actually doing some pretty good value, 500, 400. And then all of the Cavalry getting 1,000 plus. Only the nice Lionheart only getting 658, but still very healthy at the end. As for the Norskan side of things, Wulfric unfortunately fallen pretty short. Got a little flat-footed there as he got caught out by Morathi and then eventually both of the Paladins. And then the rest of the units, there was one Horsemaster in there. I must have missed that. I didn't think they had quite the funds for all of that. And then all of the Skin Wolves really got caught out, and that was kind of unfortunate though. They tried to get on top of the Scourge Runners, but it was just with the support of all the other big units, the Paladins and the like, they just were not able to do it. At least the Nar got some nice value. Rest of the units, on the other hand, both of the Silverins did okay. And then the Archers just didn't have enough time to really kind of fire things off. And with that, we are now going to be getting ready for our last fight of the day. Looks like they are all set, so we'll slide into that lobby. It is going to be the 3v3 with all of the fixings. So it is 10-2 going into the final. And, oh, I can't do that there. All right. So that's fixed. All right, so our last game of the day, it is going to be a 3v3 as we have Counts, Tomb Kings, and the Skaven versus the Empire, Lizardmen, and the Dawi. We will have Houseplant on the Vampire Counts, Vicious Satsuma on the Skaven. Kafka has control of the Tomb Kings against Wenin on the Dawi, Mr. Duddles on Empire, and Blood Og Mini, I think, goes by. Take a look at the other board. Verniker would have been, is the name for the GGX player. Yeah, this is week 2 of the Clan War Cup. So yeah, next week or the week after is going to be the GGX versus Hello, which should still be going on. I don't think there's going to be any opposition to getting that taken care of. Oops, there we go. So we'll still have another one. All right, looks like RTK is all set. So I sent a message saying everybody saw I'm ready. They can ready up and we can get in. Now, always with a live 3v3 fight, there's almost always going to be a bit of lag in game, so just kind of bear through that. Sometimes it's a little worse than others, but as long as everyone's computers is up to par, we shouldn't have any issues. Now, unfortunately, we have Skaven and Counts and even Tomb Kings, so we're probably going to be having a very high model count on those three. Luckily, this should be reduced funds, so it's 10,000 per army versus the normal 12,400. So we are loading on in, and then we'll get things underway. Hopefully the load time should be pretty telling on how it should go, so hopefully things kind of get loaded up and we won't have any more issues loading or playing through this last fight. Ooh. Yep, Han versus VM. That'll be a fun one to see. Can't remember who's casting that group. Okay, so we are loading in. And switch the scene over. That's not the time for that. Yeah, Han versus VM. I mean, you don't see Han too much in a lot of tournament scenes. I mean, just time zones. It's just a lot harder for them to make these tournaments. I mean, it's harder to get European and like the Americas to be able to line things up, North and South America versus Europe. But it's just kind of hard to get Han also engaged. Yeah, okay, so Art Walker's going to be getting that one, so he should be, because he's casting, I think, his tournament right now. Yeah, that'll be a fun one to see. So let's take a quick look at the unit count. So it's 3,500 versus 2,100. So yeah, over 5,000 total models on the field. For the undead vampire counts, we have zombies for the front line. They are going to be supported by skeleton warriors in the secondary. So just lots of just cheap infantry coming from the vampire counts. Pretty sure we're going to be seeing Isabella and 2 White Kings, as that is going to be exactly what we see. So we see Isabella Von Karstein, both of the White Kings riding in support, as the counts here is really going to be a supporting faction. We do have some Black Knights mixed in, a couple of a couple of Fellbats, looking to get into that, just any of the ranged units, but otherwise is pretty slim pickings for the vampire counts. As for the Tomb Kings, we're going to be seeing some more skeleton warriors. They're going to be taking this left flank here, as we have skeleton warriors mixed in with some Mushapti great bows, which are going to be finding some nice strong DPS at range, and kind of thrown into the middle of things. We do have Cetra the Imperishable. Looks like he's bringing Unyielding Will, Invocation of the Incantation of Cursed Blades and Incantation of Protection. Pretty standard kit for him. Otherwise, yeah, it's just going to be a massive pile. I also do have a Vargolf as well, so lots of regenerating, lots of healing coming from the vampire counts. Yeah, it's just going to be, actually we see a few extra abilities which we haven't seen on some of the earlier matches. Master of Beguilement, very nice ability there, minus 40 melee attack against like single entities, any elite unit, very good to use that at the right time. And then we just have Red Fury, Raised Dead, Invocation attack, pretty standard. So, and then for the Skaven on their side, we have some Poison Wind Globadiers, going to be kind of spread out throughout that front line. Lots of units, those really looking to grind down that infantry very, very quickly. Very different type of army than what we saw last week. We see a couple of Giselles as well. Going to be providing, or just one Giselle, Natty Booby Sharpshooter, so they do have snipe and stock, so they'll be able to fire without being seen. A good tool just to have, able to get some shots in. As for the rest of the Skaven forces, we have 2 Chieftains going to be up on their Bonebreaker mount, so they're going to be rolling in with, we have Power Grab, and that's only when the Lord has been killed or routed. Gets a nice map-wide 8 leadership, which can help offset that missing Lord. Shield of Distraction, minus 5 melee attack. And then for the Lord is going to be the Grey Seer of Ruin. Grey Seer of Ruin is going to be coming in. Just going to see if we can get the abilities here real quick before we swing on over to the other side. Unholy Clamor, we have the Dreaded 13th, Warp Lightning, Howling Warp Gale, and Arcane Conduit, and I think that wraps things up on that front. So now for GGX's forces, we do have some Chameleon Skinks going to be dotting that front line. Could be getting a little bit of just pressure and harass, but the rest of the army is going to be deployed very far back, looking like they're going to be going for a very heavy ranged build, as we have Cold One Riders mixed in with some Empire Knights for mobility. On the other far flank, we have some more Feral Cold Ones, actually, some Clever Girls off on that front. We have some Skink Cohort off in that tree, and the rest of it's going to be just Longbeards for that front line. So some nice good armor, some Maniers with blasting charges to help clear out the chaff of the undead and Skaven. All of it's going to be very low armor, so they'll be able to do quite well. Skink Cohort will actually do pretty decently as well, and just kind of bog things down. Spearmen mixed in. We also have some Iron Drakes, the Trollhammer Torpedoes, which will do quite well against any large target. They do have that bonus versus large and armor piercing. Cannons, we have the Sunmaker, as well as just a regular Hellstorm rocket battery. We have a Volkmar the Grim with all of his kit going to be coming on in, as he does have Grand Soulfire, Grand Shield of Faith, Grand Hammer, Sigmar, and his Bound Banishment. We have a Firecaster, the Bright Wizard with Fireball Burning Head. We have a Sar Scarvet for a little bit of extra melee support. We have Thoric Ironbrow bringing in all of his normal items with that Locus Power, the Rune of Doom, Rune of Speed, and the Rune of Slowness. So some nice control, able to get things engaged, and that nice melee attack buff does help quite a bit. Lord Mazdamundi going to be the centerpiece for the GGX forces with Volkmar, as he does have that Ruination of Cities. We have the Bound Banishment, Shield of the Old Ones, Apotheosis, Net of Anuntak, and that is going to be his kit. So going to be very long range, as the Master Engineer as well can be throwing things in, probably with the Fiery Ring. Actually, no, just Smoke Bomb. No Fiery Ring Authority here on the Master Engineer. Unless it's that, actually, because they have that more powder, which I did actually kind of forget that the Master Engineer does have that sort of restock. It's essentially more powder, but restock. So with those long range, it's going to be very nice to have that ability. So things going to be underway. It's just at this point, can RTK close that distance quickly enough? These Nanny Boo-Boos are probably going to have, because normally you'd think, okay, get these Nanny Boo-Boos forward, you can start firing in without really having to deal with much fire in return. But with these Chameleon Kings, they all have stock themselves, so they're going to be able to get close enough to those Nanny Boo-Boos to return fire either themselves or to allow their cannons, their Hellfire, to get some nice damage in. So they'll be able to spot those Nanny Boo-Boos, which is going to then force the rest of the infantry to kind of push forward in front of them. Luckily, all of these Fellbats should be able to at least scout out their positions. But this is going to be a very scary, tough nut to crack here. I mean, you got Slayers, you got plenty of mobility, all being very patient. All they know that they need to do is just kind of stay back, allow all their Hellstorms, like the Sunmaker, the cannons. There's nothing that can really counter these guys. You have the Ushapti Great Bows, but they will have to get in range, and the cannon should be a good deterrent to that. But if they focus down the cannon, get rid of them, then the Hellstorms might be a little bit better to deal with. But there still has to deal with the Volkmar, Mazdamundi. It's going to be a very scary force to for the Undead and the Skaven. But they will have to try and overwhelm the quality with their superior numbers, as they are rolling in with almost 1,400 more units than their opponents. Looks like things are moving almost at speed. I think it's just a slightly slowed down speed. I was doing a little count there to kind of get a feel for that. But the Hellstorm Rocket Battery is going to be opening up. All of this initial volley is going to be missing its target, as these Poison Globadiers are going to be using this hill here to at least stay out of sight. The cannons going to be getting a little bit of connection against these Poison Globadiers. But yeah, those Hellstorms going to be doing a nice bit of damage on that front, as things can be slowly using the tree line here to kind of push up. Now, these Cold One Spear Riders are going to be a little outnumbered here, and they are going to be spotted by their Fellbats. So RTK is going to know that these guys are here, as well as another unit of those Cold One Riders. But using this tree line is definitely going to be the way to go, keeping themselves either A, hidden, and B, just kind of staying out of that line of fire. However, one of the Poison Wind Globadiers has ended up routing to that focus fire from all of these long-range gun batteries. And that Master Engineer is going to be able to just kind of keep these guys nice and healthy. Looks like, yeah, just kind of repositioning here on the Sunmaker. I thought they may have dropped their model there for a sec. More shots raining in. Don't want to get too grouped up over on here, because definitely going to be targeting these Poison Wind Globadiers, and they're running right through the middle of these Skeleton Warriors and these zombies. Not necessarily a ton of funds mixed into it, but definitely going to be getting a bit of collateral damage, as Mazdamundi taking a few shots from Nanny Boo-Boo Sharpshooters, who are now going to be in range to start kind of plucking away, having a nice position up on the hill, firing down upon the enemy. Some nice volleys coming in from the Poison Wind Globadiers, able to kind of pluck away at the Chameleon Skinks, able to kind of at least pressure them back out. With them gone, though, actually the Black Knights could very easily just kind of turn their attention to these Chameleons, but it looks like instead they're going to be trying to get a charge into these Feral Cold Ones. Now, they are just Feral Cold Ones, but the Black Knights, they have this, like the Skink Cohort and these Chameleons. These Black Knights probably aren't going to be able to win that engagement. They are able to rampage with Feral Cold Ones, but unfortunately we're not able to really kind of do a whole lot on that front. Now, in the tree line, the Skink Cohort have been taken out of the fight. I mean, just so many entities, like all of these Skeleton Chariots, which I did miss earlier on. I didn't see all these chariots, so they're we have the massive chariots going to be coming out of the tree line, and they are going to be charging down this hill momentarily, I'm sure, as the Iron Drakes and the Slayers, though, are going to be fixed to meet them, and they have plenty of models. And we have a Burning Head as well, going to be arcing its way through, going to be taking out some of the Skaven slaves, but all in all, not going to be doing a ton of damage. Even the Poison Globadiers will be able to tank that, and we do get that dreaded 13th popping off on the Sunmaker, taking that thing out of the fight for good. And that is going to be it, done and dusted. That's one of the big threats, though, against playing against the Skaven with artillery, is that dreaded 13th that has 200 range and is able to really just kind of snipe out artillery pieces once it does get close enough. Otherwise, this whole flank here is just getting overloaded by RTK. Going to be charging in from the tree line, going to be hitting that front line, getting quickly into the miners with blasting charges. Lord Masamundi is also going to get tied up, but we have a bound banishment going on, and Net of Amnatok just netting down all these units, and that is just going to be a beautiful target for the Hellstorm and like a bound banishment. Just a ton of value racking its way up. Looks like we might have another follow-up here coming from another banishment. So that Light Wizard has banishment, as well as the banishment from... Actually, no, Lord Masamundi has his bound banishment, as well as the bound banishment coming from Volkmar. So 2 units of those going down into the middle of things, and we get a Warp Lightning trying to get some of the cavalry taken care of, as the Master Engineer is kind of swarmed in by just a bunch of units. We have the summon of the Storm Vermin with halberds, just getting some nice damage in before the summon does finally dissipate, as it does. Lord Masamundi is taking quite a bit of damage. I mean, all of these Blue Sharpshooters are just free to fire at whatever they want. They're not going to be having any issues with being spotted, but actually I think they are spotted right now. So things going rather well on this flank for RTK, and they've just been kind of throwing in stuff very slowly on the other flank, just keeping the attention of the units. As you can see, like Lord Masamundi, Volkmar, the Grim, they are taking quite a bit of damage. The Right Wizard actually got out of position there. I think both of the White Kings were able to get on top of that, shatter that unit completely out of the fight, and Balance Power is actually in RTK's favor, able to really use that tree line very, very well, avoid all that incoming fire. And there's just so many units, all of those chariots just charging in, and Lord Masamundi just continues to get wrecked, as the Chieftain here is doing a bunch of damage as he's just trying to get out of the fight. But I don't think Lord Masamundi is going to be playing too much of a role in this point in the fight. He's going to have to be using his Apotheosis on himself. The Net of Amnatok was cast on the White King, able to keep him occupied. And even the Source Scarvet is getting very low as well. These Iron Drake going to really have to try and start punching in against some of the big targets, like the Chieftain taking a lot of damage from that, and down it goes, 1 unit down. Now that the United Booby Sharpshooters now turning their attention to those Iron Drakes, noticing that this is really a big threat to a lot of the units that they have left. The Vargulf, even the White Kings, all the other Chieftain, the Bell, all those units are very is threatened by that Iron Drake, but is taking quite a bit of damage from them. Lord Masamundi does end up routing, and that's going to be leaving Volkmar alone, especially now that he does fall to the ground, and Volkmar is going to be just harassed by the White Kings, by the Chieftain, all of which are good units to deal with it. We also get a new Shopti summon as well to really help pin in Volkmar, as the rest of the units just kind of sweep through the rest of the GGX forces on that front. And if we take a kind of swinging look back on how things are going, even like the Spearmen and stuff are able to kind of start punching through Poison Globadiers stuck in with the Chameleon Skinks, as they now start kind of putting their own pressure on here, as the cannon's still firing away. But for the most part, all of their support is quickly dissipating. The Lord's Heroes, all of those units taking a bunch of damage. As Cetra, you can see he's already getting close to his heal cap. Those heals from the Blood Chalice doing very nice against him. Volkmar just getting beaten down. Now the Gracier of Ruin is getting a little low, as these shots from like the cannon and some nice volleys from Ekron's Miners able to help clear things out, but I think at this point it is pretty much a lost cause. A lot of the support is actually ending up shattering at this point. Things slowing down just a bit, as all of these volleys, all these explosions kind of draining the resources of some of the computers here engaged in this fight. But yeah, Volkmar getting very low. The Iron Drakes are now shut down with those Fellbats. A nice little jump on there. It looks like we're going to be getting a Dreaded 13th, going to be dropping onto those miners, and that Dreaded 13th going to be triggering army losses, as now only Volkmar the Grim remains, and there is way too many units to get things dealt with. And yeah, Volkmar is going to be going down here momentarily, as the rest of the Goon Squad, that is the White Kings, the Chieftain, even Isabella now is coming in, sensing blood in the water, Down goes Volkmar, and down goes the forces of GGX, and that is going to be our last match, as RTK is going to be pushing on through, only dropping the first 2 games, and then getting their act together, going very strong throughout. And we still firing a little bit in that back there, so we'll see how things did before we close things out here real quick. But well played to both sides. Had some very good games, especially some of those earlier fights was very, very good. So we'll update that scorecard real quick, go over the remainder of the units that were in this fight. 13-2. So for Cetra, the Imperishable on the Tomb King, getting 1300. Rest of the units just going super wide with infantry, so not really expecting too much from them. Just mucking things up. Chariots doing all right, getting 500 a piece. Still sitting pretty decent in terms of HP. The Ushapti Grippa, one of them getting 1200, some very nice work there. As for the Skaven, led by Satsuma, the Grazier getting 2400. Some of those spells coming in with the Dreaded 13th, got a lot of damage done. You don't get the value from the units that actually get kills, but you must have got a lot of damage done just on the bell. Both the chieftains getting a ton of value to boot. As for the Natty Bowie Sharpshooters, getting 1426, able to just fire away freely throughout the course of the fight. Nothing really targeted them. And then all of these Poison Wind Globadiers just racking up the value. I know a lot of this is going to be some friendly fire, but 1300, 1000, 1500 on that one, almost 1500, and almost 1500 on the other one, so a ton of poison value. So just nuking everything in sight from those guys. As for the undead, both of the White Kings doing all right. Isabella really getting that nice support, and then of course all the infantry, you're not going to be expecting much, if anything at all. And just some nice play with some of the Fellbats, shutting down some of the range units. The Dire Pack actually getting 1000 in value, and then the Vargulf as well getting 873, so plenty of good stuff there. As for the rest of the forces from the Empire, Volkmar getting 2100. The Bright Wizard got taken out of the fight pretty early on. Really wasn't able to get a whole lot of spellcasting off, and leaving kind of all of that spellcasting to Volkmar to an extent. And then both of the Hellstorms actually doing some decent damage, 1100, 1300 on that front. As for the Lizardmen, 1500 on Mazda Mundi. And then rest of the play, all of the chameleons getting some decent value. And then for the dwarves, Thoric getting 1600, and then the rest of the units doing some decent work, kind of just holding the line, but they just got overwhelmed. I mean, Slayers got 1600, Trollheimers got 14, and then the cannons as well got 70, so some good value on the range department from the Dawi. But that is going to be all she wrote for all of the games, as RTK finishes very strong with that fight. So it's kind of reflecting that there. And that's going to be our series. So it went rather well for GGX to start things off. They had some very good games. I mean, a lot of good games throughout, but some of those early fights were just real nail biters. So very well played on that side. Otherwise, everything went very well. Loved seeing this kind of format played. So not sure on the next date yet, but GGX should be playing Hello in the next round. And that should be next week or two, so look forward to seeing that. Hopefully I'm able to fit that in at a reasonable time. Hopefully something doesn't kind of come popping up, but that was a very fun game. Hopefully everyone had a ton of fun playing. Yeah, I look forward to seeing the rest of the games played here in the next coming weeks and leading up through to around about the Warhammer 3 release date. I know that got pushed back a little bit, but hopefully everything's going to be nice and smooth from here on out. GG's all around in chat, but otherwise, yeah, without unless there's anything else that everyone wants to just kind of sit and talk about, otherwise I think we are going to close things out, just shy of that 3-hour mark. Glad all you guys could come and join for the festivities today. Things went far better than the last stream in terms of quality. I think I saw it drop only once or twice there, so that was a big plus. Everything nice and smooth. Everything stayed up and running. But yeah, unless I see anything else, I think we're going to close things out. Thank you guys all for joining once again. Hope you enjoyed. And without further ado, have a good one.